Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The rain's been coming down for 3 hours now, drumming against the dispatch center windows like fingertips on glass. It's 2:47 a.m. and I'm alone with the scanners, the way I prefer it on nights like this. The coffee's gone cold, but I keep sipping it anyway. Some habits die hard after 22 years behind this console. My name's Sarah Chen, and I've been working dispatch for the Seattle Police Department since before most of these officers were born. Tonight, I'm recording this because there are calls that never leave you. Calls that sit in your chest like stones, growing heavier with each passing year. The brass says we're not supposed to talk about them, but hell, retirement's in 6 months, and some stories need telling. Let me start with the Belltown incident. November 15th, 2021. The scanner crackled to life at 11:23 p.m. with what sounded like a routine domestic disturbance call. Officer Martinez's voice came through clear and professional. I'd been routing his calls for 8 years, and he was solid. Reliable. The kind of cop who followed protocol and never gave me headaches. Control, this is Unit 47. We've got a possible 1016 at 2847 2nd Avenue, apartment 4B. Multiple noise complaints from neighbors about yelling and what sounds like furniture being thrown around. I leaned forward, adjusting my headset. The fluorescent lights above me hummed their constant tune, casting that familiar pale glow over the rows of empty dispatch stations. Night shift was always quieter, but never quiet enough. Copy that, 47. Any additional units requested? Negative, Control. Sounds like a standard domestic. I'll check it out and advise. Standard domestic dispute call. We get maybe 30 of these a week in this city. Couples fighting, neighbors complaining, officers mediating. Usually ends with someone sleeping on a couch and promises to keep it down. But Martinez's voice came back on the radio 4 minutes later, and something had changed. Something subtle in his tone that made me sit up straighter. Control, this is 47. I'm outside apartment 4B. The complainant says the yelling stopped about 10 minutes ago, but the door's slightly ajar. I can see into the living room from the hallway. Static filled the channel for a moment. I waited, watching the green line jump on my screen, listening to the rain intensify against the windows. 47, please repeat. You're breaking up. Control. There's furniture overturned in there. Coffee table on its side, couch cushions scattered, but no one's responding to my calls. I can hear what sounds like someone crying, but very quietly. I'm going to make entry and check for injuries. Protocol says they should wait for backup on a potential domestic violence scene, especially if there might be injuries involved. I should have insisted. Instead, I said, copy 47, use caution. I'll have Unit 23 start your way as backup ETA about 6 minutes. That's when the transmission went sideways. Martinez's radio keyed up, and instead of his voice, I heard something else. A woman speaking very quietly, very deliberately, like she was trying not to be overheard. Please, don't hurt me anymore. I promised I wouldn't tell anyone. I'll do whatever you want. Just, please, don't hurt me. The hair on my arms stood up. This wasn't coming through Martinez's radio in the normal way. It was like the woman was speaking directly into our frequency. I'd heard hundreds of thousands of transmissions over the years, but this was different. The voice was too clear, too isolated from background noise. No echo from the apartment walls, no interference from Martinez's radio equipment. I grabbed my supervisor's attention, pointing at my headset, but he was dealing with another call. The woman's voice continued, and now there was desperation creeping in. "I know you said you'd kill me if I screamed, but please, I have a little girl. She's only 6. She needs me to come home." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't right. Martinez should be responding, should be telling me what he was seeing. Instead, dead air for 15 seconds. Then his voice came back, but it was different. Strained, like he was trying to sound normal, but something was very wrong. "Control. Apartment's empty. No signs of struggle. Looks like the neighbors might have exaggerated what they heard. I'm clearing the scene." I stared at my console, replaying what I'd just heard. He'd reported overturned furniture, someone crying, the need to check for injuries. Now he was saying empty apartment, no signs of struggle. 47, confirm your status. You just reported furniture overturned and possible injuries. Negative, Control. Everything's secure here. Apartment's clean, no one home. Must have been a misunderstanding with the neighbors. Maybe they heard a TV turned up too loud or something. But I'd heard that woman's voice, clear as day. And there was something else in Martinez's transmission now. In the background, barely audible, I could swear I heard breathing that wasn't his. Slow, deliberate breaths, like someone trying to stay very quiet. "Control, this is 47. I'm 10-8 back in service." He signed off, but the woman's voice had been so real, so present. I sat there for a moment, listening to the rain and the steady hum of the dispatch center, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. The other dispatchers were handling their calls, the night rolling on like nothing had happened. I pulled the audio logs the next morning. The woman's voice was there, time-stamped at 11:28:33. Crystal clear, every word of her desperate plea recorded in our system. But according to the official report filed by Martinez, he'd never requested backup, never reported overturned furniture, and cleared the scene without incident after finding an empty apartment. When I approached Martinez about the discrepancy, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about. That was a routine call. False alarm from noisy neighbors. I filed a complete report." But his hands were shaking when he said it, and he couldn't meet my eyes. 2 weeks later, he put in for early retirement. 30-year-old cop with a spotless record, just walking away from the job. I tried to let it go, tried to convince myself that maybe I'd misheard something, that maybe the stress of the job was getting to me. But 3 months later, I got a call from a woman named Linda Vasquez. She'd been trying to reach Martinez about her sister, who'd been missing for over a year. My sister Elena lived in that building on 2nd Avenue, apartment 4B. She disappeared in September 2020, and the police said she probably just left town. But she would never leave her daughter. Never. The address matched. Elena Vasquez, 28 years old, single mother. Last seen leaving work at a downtown restaurant. No signs of struggle in her apartment. No evidence of foul play. Case closed as a voluntary missing person. But Linda had something else to tell me. Elena had called her sister the night she disappeared, around 11:30 p.m. She'd been whispering, saying someone was in her apartment, that she was hiding in the bathroom. The call had cut off abruptly. I looked up the missing person report. No mention of any phone call, no mention of Elena being afraid. Just a woman who'd apparently packed up and left town without telling anyone, abandoning her 6-year-old daughter. The same daughter the voice on the radio had mentioned. I never told Linda about the transmission I'd heard. How could I? But sometimes, late at night when the dispatch center gets quiet, I think about Elena Vasquez. I think about her voice coming through our frequency, begging for help long after she'd disappeared. And I think about Martinez, who took early retirement and moved to another state, who couldn't look me in the eye when I asked him about a routine call. The scanner's quiet now, just the soft hiss of static and the rain against the windows. But I know that woman's voice is still out there, somewhere in the frequencies between the calls we answer and the calls we miss. Still asking for help that never came. The storm's getting worse. I can hear the wind picking up outside, and the old building settling in that way that makes you wonder if the walls are strong enough. It's been 6 months since the Belltown incident, and I thought I'd put it behind me. But then, the Morrison Bridge call happened, and everything changed. March 3rd, 2022, 3:17 a.m. The scanner lit up with a signal 13, emergency assistance needed. Officer Thompson's voice came through, and I could hear the panic he was trying to suppress. All units, yes, this is Unit 19. I've got a possible jumper on the Morrison Bridge. Adult male, approximately 25, standing on the outside railing on the east side. I need traffic control and crisis negotiation to respond immediately. Thompson had been on the force for 12 years. Good cop, steady under pressure. I'd never heard his voice crack before, but there was something in it now, something that made me lean closer to my console. Copy, 19. Units 8 and 14 are en route. Crisis team is approximately 20 minutes out. Can you establish communication with the subject? Control, I'm trying, but he's not responding to me. He's talking to someone, but there's no one else up here. I've got the bridge cleared of traffic, but this guy's having a full conversation with empty air. The dispatch center felt colder suddenly. The heating system was humming in the background, but I could feel goosebumps rising on my arms. After the Belltown incident, I developed a sensitivity to calls that felt off. 19, can you make out what he's saying? He keeps saying, I know you're there, and I can see you now. And I should have listened to you before. Control. I'm looking at him through binoculars. His eyes are tracking something, following movement, but I swear to God there's nothing there. I was already flagging the call as high priority, getting ready to pull in additional resources. But that's when we heard it. Not through Thompson's radio, through the emergency frequency. A young man's voice, crystal clear, like he was standing right next to me in the dispatch center. I understand now. I understand why you brought me here. I've been running from this for so long, but you're right, it's time. My blood went cold. The voice was calm, resigned, but there was something underneath it. A tremor of fear that he was trying to hide. Thompson's voice cracked through immediately after. Control, did you copy that? The subject just spoke, but his lips weren't moving. I'm watching him through binoculars, and that transmission came through your frequency, not mine. I was already pulling up the emergency protocols manual, but my hands were shaking. The other dispatchers were looking over at me now, sensing something was wrong. In 22 years, I'd never heard a civilian voice come through police radio without an officer transmitting it. 19, maintain visual contact. Backup is 3 minutes out. Thompson's voice came back, strained. Control, he's talking again. He's saying, tell my family I tried to fight it, but it was too strong, but his mouth isn't moving. I can see his lips clearly, and they're not moving. Then the young man's voice again, but this time it sounded different, distant, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. Tell my sister Rebecca I'm sorry. Tell her the voices finally stopped. The transmission ended with the sound I'll never forget. Not a splash, more like a whisper, then complete silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Thompson's voice came back, hollow and shaken. Control. Subject is down. I need fire and rescue to respond to the water immediately, multiple units for recovery operations. I was already dispatching the rescue teams, but something Thompson said next made me pause. "Control, there's something else." Right before he jumped, he waved, not at me, at something behind me. I turned around, and there was nothing there, but I felt like someone was watching me, like there was someone standing right behind me. The rescue operation went on for 3 days. They searched the Willamette River from the bridge all the way to the Columbia. Divers, boats, helicopter searches. Nothing, no body, no personal effects, nothing. But here's what kept me awake at night. No missing person report was ever filed. No one came forward looking for a young man who jumped from the Morrison Bridge. No family members asking about a Rebecca. No friends reporting someone missing. I pulled the dispatch logs. The young man's voice was there, both transmissions. Time-stamped, clear as day. But according to the official report, Thompson had responded to a false alarm about someone on the bridge, found nothing, and cleared the scene without incident. When I tried to talk to Thompson about it, he just stared at me. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about. I got a call about a possible jumper. Checked it out, didn't find anyone. End of story." But he requested a transfer to desk duty the following week. Said he needed a break from patrol work. Said he wasn't sleeping well. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a woman named Rebecca Martinez. She was looking for her brother David, who'd been missing for 3 months. She'd been calling police departments across the Pacific Northwest, following rumors that he might have been seen in various cities. My brother had been struggling with depression and addiction, she told me. But he'd been clean for 6 months and he was doing better. He wouldn't just disappear without telling someone. I asked her about the last time she'd spoken to him. She said he'd called her in December, around Christmas, saying he was hearing voices again, that they were telling him to come to Portland. He said the voices were getting stronger, that they were calling him to a bridge. I thought he was having a breakdown. I should have done more to help him. The timeline matched. David Martinez had been missing since December. The bridge incident was in March. 3 months of voices telling him to come to Portland, to come to a bridge. I never told Rebecca about the transmission. How could I? But I looked up David's information, and the details matched what we'd heard. 25 years old, history of depression, a sister named Rebecca. The scanner's been quiet for the past hour, just the steady hiss of static. But I keep thinking about David Martinez, standing on that bridge, talking to something only he could see. And I think about Thompson, who saw nothing but felt someone watching him. Sometimes I wonder if the voices that call people to bridges are the same ones that come through our frequencies. If there's something out there that knows how to reach us through the radio waves, how to speak directly into our systems. The rain's getting heavier now, and I can hear thunder in the distance. But I'll keep listening, because maybe somewhere out there, someone else is trying to get through. Someone else who needs help that we can't give. The thunder's right overhead now, and every flash of lightning turns the dispatch center into a strobing nightmare. It's 4:18 a.m., and I've been sitting here for almost 2 hours, remembering calls that officially never happened. But there's one more I need to tell you about before I lose my nerve. The Riverside incident. That's what changed everything for me. May 7th, 2022, 2:34 a.m. I was training a new dispatcher that night, Kelly Morrison, fresh out of the academy, 23 years old, eager to help people. Reminded me of myself when I started. She had that optimism that comes before the job beats it out of you. The call came in on the civilian emergency line, not through police radio. Standard 911 call, but something about it felt wrong from the first word. 911? What's your emergency? Kelly took the call while I monitored, headset on, ready to guide her through any complications. The voice that came through was a woman, maybe mid-30s, speaking from what sounded like an enclosed space. "Please, you have to help me. I've been held here for 4 days. I don't know exactly where I am, but I can hear trains passing nearby every hour on the hour." The caller's voice was steady, controlled. Not hysterical like most kidnapping calls. That should have been my first warning. Victims in genuine distress usually can't maintain that level of composure. But Kelly was focused on following protocol. "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your name?" "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I live at 4847 Rainier Avenue South. I was walking to my car after my shift at Providence Hospital when someone grabbed me from behind. I woke up in this place." Kelly was doing everything right. Getting information, keeping the caller calm, already signaling for me to run a trace on the incoming call. The trace came back to a cell phone number that had been reported stolen 3 weeks earlier. "Jennifer, I need you to stay on the line. Can you describe where you are right now?" "It's very dark, concrete walls, no windows. There's a metal door with no handle on the inside. The floor is damp, and there's a smell like something died down here a long time ago." I was already pulling up missing person reports while Kelly kept the caller talking. No Jennifer Walsh reported missing in the past week. No one matching that description or address. "Jennifer, you're being very brave. I'm going to send officers to your house to talk to your family, and we're working on finding your location." That's when Jennifer Walsh said something that made my blood freeze. "My family?" "Officer, they're not at home. They're here with me." Kelly looked at me, confused. I leaned over and whispered for her to keep the caller talking while I checked for additional missing persons. "Jennifer, I don't understand. Are other people being held with you?" "My husband Michael and my daughter Emma. They're sleeping right now, but they won't wake up. I keep trying to shake them, keep calling their names, but they won't wake up." The hair on my neck stood up. Kelly was getting pale, but she kept going. She was tougher than she looked. "Jennifer, can you tell me what happened to your family?" "The man said they were making too much noise. He said they were scaring the neighbors upstairs, so he made them quiet. But I've been good, I've been very quiet, so he said I could make this one call. He said someone needs to know what happened to us." I was frantically searching every database I had access to. No Jennifer Walsh at that address. No missing family matching that description. But the woman on the phone continued, and her voice was getting weaker. "I think I'm getting sick. I haven't had water in a long time, and there are flies down here, so many flies. Can you tell the officers to hurry?" "Jennifer, we're doing everything we can. Can you hear anything else that might help us find you? Traffic, construction, anything?" That's when she said something that made Kelly drop her pen. "The man is coming back. I can hear his footsteps on the stairs above me. Heavy boots, like work boots. He's going to be angry that I called. He told me if I made any noise, he'd do to me what he did to them." In the background, we could actually hear footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. The sound was crystal clear through the phone. No interference, no echo. "Jennifer, are you still there?" "He's here. He's standing right behind me. He's looking at the phone. He's not happy." A new voice came on the line. Male, calm, almost conversational, like he was discussing the weather. "You really shouldn't have called. I specifically told her not to call. Now, I'm going to have to start over with someone else." The line went dead. Kelly was shaking. I immediately dispatched units to 4847 Rainier Avenue South, but I already knew what they'd find. The house was empty. Had been empty for 2 months, in fact. For sale sign in the yard, realtor's lockbox on the door. No Jennifer Walsh had ever lived there. But here's what made me request a meeting with Internal Affairs. I ran that stolen cell phone through our system. It had been used to make one previous call, 3 weeks earlier, to 911. The caller was a woman named Jennifer Walsh, reporting that her cell phone had been stolen from her car while she was working her shift at Providence Hospital. The call lasted 43 seconds. She gave her name, address, and phone number to file the report. The same information the woman in the basement had given us. When I pulled that original call to compare the voices, I felt my world tilt sideways. The voice reporting the stolen phone was identical to the voice calling from the basement. Every inflection, every pause, every way she pronounced her words. Jennifer Walsh had called to report her own phone stolen. Then, 3 weeks later, she called from that same stolen phone to report her own kidnapping. I've been over this 1,000 times in the past 2 years. Cell phones can be cloned. Voices can be mimicked with enough technology. But the detail, the consistency, the absolute terror in that basement call, it was real. I know real fear when I hear it, and that woman was genuinely terrified. But here's what really kept me awake. I contacted Providence Hospital. They had an employee named Jennifer Walsh. Had her for 3 years. But she'd called in sick indefinitely, starting 3 weeks before the stolen phone report. Her supervisor said she'd seemed increasingly paranoid and anxious in the weeks before she stopped coming to work. Her last day, Jennifer had told her coworker that someone was following her, that she felt like she was being watched, that she was afraid to go home. The address she'd given the hospital as her residence, 4847 Rainier Avenue South. The empty house. I tried to track down Jennifer Walsh through every channel I had. Social Security, DMV records, tax records. It was like she'd never existed beyond those employment records and that 911 call reporting her stolen phone. Kelly Morrison quit 2 weeks later, said she was switching careers, that she'd realized law enforcement wasn't for her. But before she left, she pulled me aside. "Sarah, that call. I've been thinking about it. When that man came on the line, when he said he'd have to start over with someone else, I think he was talking about us. I think we were the someone else." She was right, of course. I'd been having the same thought, but I hadn't wanted to admit it. The call felt like a test, like someone was seeing how we'd respond. And we'd failed the test by dispatching units to an empty house. The scanner's been quiet for 20 minutes now, just the steady rhythm of rain against the windows. But I keep thinking about Jennifer Walsh, who reported her own phone stolen and then called from it to report her own kidnapping. Who worked at a hospital but lived at an empty house. Who existed just enough to make one 911 call and then vanished like smoke. Sometimes I think about that man's voice, so calm and conversational. How he said he'd have to start over with someone else. And I wonder if somewhere out there, in another city, another dispatcher is getting a call from Jennifer Walsh. Or from someone just like her. The power flickered just now, and for a moment, the dispatch center went completely dark, except for the glow of the emergency backup systems. In that brief darkness, I heard something I shouldn't have. A voice coming through the scanner, faint but clear, saying, "Sarah, are you listening?" But when the lights came back on, all the channels were silent. That's been happening more often lately. Voices that seem to know my name, transmissions that come through frequencies that should be empty. It started about 6 months after the Jennifer Walsh call, and it's been getting worse ever since. But let me tell you about the Woodland Park incident. September the 14th, 2022, 1:52 a.m. This one still makes my hands shake when I think about it. Officer Davis was doing his regular patrol through the park when he called in what he thought was a drunk and disorderly. His voice came through tired but routine. He'd been working nights for 15 years, and nothing much surprised him anymore. Control. Now, this is Unit 26. I've got a male subject in Woodland Park near the Rose Garden. Appears intoxicated, talking to himself, possibly needs medical attention. Standard call. We get them all the time, especially in the parks. Usually homeless individuals, sometimes people having mental health episodes. Davis knew how to handle these situations with compassion. Copy, 26. Need backup or medical response? Negative for now. Control. Let me try to make contact first. Subject appears calm, just confused. 3 minutes passed. Then Davis's voice came back, but there was something different in it. Attention, I hadn't heard before. Control, this is getting strange. The subject, he knows my name. He knows details about my family that aren't public record. I sat up straighter. Davis was a private guy. Didn't talk much about his personal life, even with other officers. 26, can you clarify? He just told me that my daughter Sarah, that's my youngest, is having trouble sleeping because she's worried about Daddy working nights. Control. My daughter's 5 years old, and I've never mentioned her on the radio. This guy shouldn't know she exists. The chill I'd been feeling lately came back stronger. After Jennifer Walsh, I'd started paying closer attention to calls that felt off. This one was setting off every alarm in my head. 26, describe the subject. White male, approximately 60, wearing a dark coat. But here's the thing, Control. He looks familiar, like someone I should know, but I can't place where from. That's when we heard another voice come through the frequency. Not Davis's radio. It was coming through our emergency channel again. An older man speaking with the kind of authority that makes you pay attention. Officer Davis, you don't remember me because we never actually met, but I know you. I know all of you. Davis's voice cracked through immediately after. Control, the subject's mouth didn't move. He's standing right in front of me, and I can see his face clearly. That transmission came through your frequency. My supervisor was at my desk now, listening with his own headset. Other dispatchers were looking over, sensing something was wrong. The older man's voice continued. I've been watching your department for 23 years, Sarah Chen. Yes, I know you're listening. I know you've been getting calls that don't make sense. Voices that shouldn't exist. He knew my name. He was speaking directly to me through a frequency that civilians shouldn't have access to. I grabbed my supervisor's arm, pointing at my screen, but he just looked confused. Davis, what's your status? Control. I can hear the transmission you're receiving, but the subject in front of me isn't speaking. He's just smiling. But here's what's really weird. I'm looking at him, and I swear I recognize him from somewhere, like an old photograph. The older man's voice came back, and this time there was something almost paternal in his tone. Tell her, Davis. Tell Sarah about the photograph in Chief Morrison's office, the one from 1999. Davis was quiet for a long moment. Then his voice came back, shaky. Control. There's a photograph in Chief Morrison's office. Group photo from 1999 before I joined the department. This man, he looks exactly like someone in that photograph. But that photo is 23 years old. I knew the photograph Davis was talking about. It hung behind the chief's desk, the entire department from 1999, including some officers who died on duty since then, but I'd never paid close attention to individual faces. Officer Davis, he's an older gentleman in a dark coat, gray hair, maybe 60 years old. That's exactly right, Control. But the man in the photograph would be in his 80s by now, if he was still alive. The older man's voice interrupted. "I'm not alive, Davis. Haven't been for 18 years. But that doesn't stop me from watching, from listening to every call that comes through these frequencies." Dead air for 15 seconds. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Control. The subject just walked away. But here's the thing. There's nowhere for him to go. I'm in an open area of the park, good visibility in all directions. He was right in front of me, and then he just wasn't. Davis searched the park for 20 minutes. No sign of anyone. No footprints in the damp grass. No indication that anyone had been there at all. The next morning, I went to Chief Morrison's office and looked at that 1999 photograph. Third row, second from the left, was Officer Robert Kellerman, 60 years old at the time of the photo. He died in 2004 during a domestic violence call, heart attack, while pursuing a suspect. The man Davis had described was identical to Kellerman, just as he'd appeared in the photograph, but 18 years older. When I tried to discuss the incident with Davis, he looked at me blankly. "Sarah, I didn't have any unusual calls last night. Just routine patrol through Woodland Park. Nothing to report." But I checked the logs. The older man's voice was there, every word of his transmission recorded, time-stamped and clear. But according to Davis's official report, he'd completed a routine patrol with no incidents. 3 days later, I received a phone call at home. Not at the station, at my personal residence, on a landline number I'd had for 15 years, and given to maybe 5 people total. The voice was the same older man from the park. "Sarah, you're starting to understand, aren't you? That the frequencies carry more than just radio signals. That voices can travel through channels that shouldn't exist." I hung up immediately, but the phone rang again. "I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to warn you. There are others listening to your calls. Others who aren't as benevolent as I am." I unplugged the phone and didn't plug it back in for 3 weeks. But sometimes, late at night, I could swear I heard it ringing anyway. The storm's almost directly overhead now. Lightning keeps illuminating the dispatch center in stark white flashes. And in those moments of brightness, I sometimes see shadows that shouldn't be there. Figures standing behind empty dispatch stations, watching me work. But when the lightning fades and my eyes adjust back to the fluorescent lighting, the shadows are gone. Always gone. Robert Kellerman has been dead for 18 years, but his voice comes through our frequencies warning me about others who are listening. Others who might not be as kind. The scanner crackles with static, and for just a moment I hear what sounds like multiple voices whispering my name. But when I lean closer to listen, there's nothing there but the rain and the endless hiss of empty channels. 22 years, and I thought I understood how radio waves worked, how voices traveled through the air, how transmissions moved from one point to another. But lately, I'm starting to think the frequencies carry more than just signals. They carry memories, echoes of voices that once spoke into microphones, still bouncing around in the electromagnetic spectrum. The power's been fluctuating for the past hour, and each time it dims, I hear them more clearly. The voices between the static, the transmissions that come from frequencies that don't exist on any chart. They're getting stronger, more insistent. Like they know my retirement is coming up, and they're running out of time to tell me something important. Let me tell you about the call that changed everything. January 15th, 2023, 5:47 a.m. I was working alone. The night dispatcher had called in sick, and I was covering both shifts. The building was empty except for security, and the silence felt heavier than usual. The scanner had been quiet for over an hour when it suddenly erupted with what sounded like chaos. Multiple voices, overlapping transmissions, Officers calling for backup from locations I couldn't identify. Control, this is Unit 12. We need immediate backup at the corner of 5th and Pine. Shots fired, officer down. But we didn't have a Unit 12 on duty that night. I checked the roster 3 times. The voice was clear, desperate, but the unit number didn't exist in our current system. Control, Unit 8 responding to Assist 12, ETA 2 minutes. Unit 8 was Officer Patricia Wong, and she was at the station filing paperwork. I could see her through the window sitting at her desk, but her voice was coming through the radio calling for backup to a scene she wasn't at. I tried to respond, but every time I keyed my microphone, the transmissions continued like I wasn't there, like I was listening to something that had already happened. Control, this is Unit 12. Suspect is fleeing north on 5th Street. White male, approximately 30, wearing a red jacket. He's armed and dangerous. The voice from Unit 12 was getting weaker, more strained. I recognized it now, Officer Marcus Thompson, but Thompson had transferred to Portland 3 years ago. Unit 12, what's your condition? Paramedics are en route. That was my own voice coming through the radio, but I wasn't speaking. I was sitting at my console listening to myself dispatch calls that I couldn't remember making. Control, this is 12. I'm hit pretty bad. Tell my wife, tell her I tried to come home. The transmission ended with a sound that made my blood freeze. A final breath, then silence. I sat there in the empty dispatch center listening to what sounded like my own voice coordinating a response to an officer-involved shooting that wasn't happening. But I remembered this call. It had happened 3 years ago, the night Thompson was shot during a robbery response, the night I'd worked a double shift because of a flu outbreak, the night Thompson died. But in my memory, I'd dispatched the call perfectly. I'd gotten back up there in time, coordinated with paramedics, saved his life. Thompson had transferred to Portland because his wife wanted to be closer to family, not because he'd died. Yet here I was, listening to the real version. The version where I'd been too slow to understand what was happening, where my response had cost a good officer his life. Control, this is Unit 8. We're at the scene. Unit 12 is, Thompson is gone. Suspect escaped on foot. Wong's voice, 3 years ago, reporting Thompson's death. A death that had never happened in my memory. The scanner went quiet for exactly 60 seconds. Then another voice came through. Thompson's voice, but different now. Calmer. Sarah, you remember it differently because you couldn't live with the truth. But I need you to remember the real version, now. I felt dizzy, like the room was tilting. Thompson was alive. He'd sent me a Christmas card from Portland just 2 months ago. Check your desk drawer, Sarah, the bottom one, in the back. With shaking hands, I opened the drawer. Behind old pens and emergency contact lists, my fingers found something I'd forgotten was there. An official commendation letter dated 3 years ago, for exceptional service during the line of duty death of Officer Marcus Thompson. A commendation for a death that had never happened, or a death I'd made myself forget. Sarah, the frequencies remember everything, every call, every response, every mistake. You've been hearing the voices of officers who died because of delayed responses, missed calls, wrong decisions. I pulled out my personnel file from the desk. 22 years of performance reviews, incident reports, commendations. But scattered throughout were reports I didn't remember. Delayed response times, missed emergency calls, officers injured or killed while waiting for backup that arrived too late. Elena Vasquez, response delayed by 4 minutes while I handled another call. Found dead in her apartment 3 days later. David Martinez, crisis negotiation team delayed. arrived to find the bridge empty and blood on the railing. Jennifer Walsh, units dispatched to wrong address. No follow-up investigation ordered. Officer Thompson, backup delayed, arrived to find him bleeding out in an alley. All the voices I'd been hearing for months. All the calls that came through frequencies that shouldn't exist. They were the ones I'd failed. The ones who died while I sat at this console making the wrong decisions. Sarah, you're a good dispatcher, but you're human, and humans make mistakes. The problem is that you couldn't live with the mistakes, so you changed them in your memory. Thompson's voice was gentle now, understanding. But the frequencies don't forget. Radio waves carry the truth, even when we can't face it. Every transmission that ever went out is still out there, bouncing around in the electromagnetic spectrum. Still calling for help. I looked around the empty dispatch center at the 22 years of my life I'd spent in this chair. How many calls had I changed in my memory? How many deaths had I hidden from myself? The scanner crackled again, and this time I heard them all. Elena, David, Jennifer, Thompson, and dozens of others. A chorus of voices I'd failed, all speaking at once. We don't blame you, Sarah. We just needed you to remember us as we really were, not as you wished we'd been. I pulled out my resignation letter, the one I'd been carrying in my briefcase for 3 months, never quite ready to submit it. But now I understood why I couldn't sleep at night, why I heard voices in empty frequencies, why every call felt like a test I was destined to fail. The voices weren't haunting me. They were trying to help me remember the truth. I signed the letter with a pen that felt impossibly heavy. 22 years of service, ending with the realization that I'd been lying to myself for most of it. Thank you, Sarah, for listening, for finally hearing us. The scanner went quiet. Not just quiet, silent in a way I'd never heard before. Like every frequency had been cleared, every transmission finally delivered. Outside, the storm was beginning to move away. The thunder was getting distant, the lightning less frequent. In 6 hours, I'd walk into Chief Morrison's office and hand him my resignation. I'd tell him it was time for someone else to take over the night shift. But I wouldn't tell him about the voices, about the frequencies that carry more than just radio signals, about the transmissions that come from people who are still trying to get through, years after their last call. The storm has passed, but the silence it left behind is worse than the chaos. It's 6:23 a.m. now, and the day shift will be arriving soon. I can hear their cars pulling into the parking lot, doors slamming, the familiar sound of officers starting another shift. They have no idea what I've been listening to all night. I should end this recording here, should pack up my things, submit my resignation and walk away from 22 years of voices that shouldn't exist. But there's one more call I need to tell you about, the one that's happening right now. At 6:18 a.m., 5 minutes ago, my console lit up with an incoming transmission. But all the officers are either off duty or just arriving for day shift. No one should be making calls yet. Control, this is Unit 1. I have traffic stopped on I-5 southbound. Mile marker 167. Single vehicle collision, driver appears unconscious. Unit 1, the chief's car. But Chief Morrison doesn't work nights, and his car has been in the shop for the past week. Unit 1, confirm your location and status. I responded automatically, even though I knew something was wrong. The voice was Chief Morrison's, but not quite right. Like someone doing a very good impression. Control, I need fire and rescue to respond. Driver is a young woman, approximately 25, dark hair. Vehicle has significant front-end damage. I started dispatching emergency services, but my hands were shaking. After everything I'd heard tonight, this felt different. More immediate, more dangerous. Unit 1, Can you provide additional details on the driver's condition? She's breathing, but unresponsive. But Control, there's something else. Something you need to know before the other units arrive. The voice that had been impersonating Chief Morrison changed, became something else entirely. Something that made my skin crawl. The accident happened 3 hours ago, Sarah. The real responders already came and went. The real Chief Morrison went home at midnight. I looked at my console at the timestamps on the call. 6:18 a.m. But if the accident was 3 hours ago, that would put it at 3:18 a.m., right when I was recording the first part of this confession. Who is this? How did you access this frequency? I'm the one who's been listening to all your calls, Sarah, all your failures, all your forgotten mistakes, and now I'm the one who's going to help you remember the most important one. The dispatch center felt colder suddenly. The fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, and the shadows in the corners looked deeper than they should. The young woman in the car, Sarah. Her name is Jessica Chen. Ring any bells? My heart stopped. Jessica Chen, my sister's daughter, my niece who'd been driving home from her night shift at the hospital, who should have been safe in her apartment by now. No, Jessica wasn't working tonight. She had the week off. Check your phone, Sarah. Check the missed calls. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my personal cell phone. 7 missed calls from Jessica, starting at 3:15 a.m., the last one at 3:18 a.m. I played the voicemail from the final call. Jessica's voice, scared and confused. Aunt Sarah, I'm in trouble. I was driving home from work and something happened to my car. I think I hit something, but I can't remember. I'm on I-5, and I can see emergency lights, but no one's helping me. Can you send someone? I'm scared. The voicemail was time-stamped 3:18 a.m., the same time I'd started this recording. The same time I'd been sitting here, talking into my headset about old calls and forgotten voices, while my niece was dying on the freeway. You see, Sarah, even tonight, even during your final shift, you missed the most important call of all. While you were confessing your past failures, you were creating a new one. I was already grabbing my radio, calling for real units to respond to mile marker 167, but the voice continued. It's too late now, just like it was too late for Elena, for David, for Jennifer, for Thompson, just like it's always too late when you're the one making the decisions. The scanner erupted with real traffic now. Day shift officers responding to my emergency call. Dispatchers arriving for their shifts. The familiar chaos of a major incident. But underneath it all, I could still hear that other voice. This is what you do, Sarah Chen. You sit in your chair, making life and death decisions, and people die while you're distracted by ghosts. Units arrived at mile marker 167. Empty freeway, no accident, no vehicle, no Jessica. I called her apartment, no answer. I called her work. They said she'd left at 3 a.m., same as always. But she never made it home. I've been calling hospitals, checking with other departments, filing missing person reports. It's been 4 hours now, and there's no sign of her. No evidence she was ever in an accident. No proof she was ever in danger. Except for those voicemails. 7 calls for help that I never heard because I was too busy listening to the voices of people I'd failed before. The day shift is in full swing now. They're handling calls, dispatching units, saving lives while I sit here with my resignation letter and my recording of a night that never happened. Because that's the truth, isn't it? None of this happened. Elena Vasquez, David Martinez, Jennifer Walsh, I looked them up. Really looked them up, not just in my failing memory. Elena Vasquez moved to California 2 years ago. David Martinez is alive and well in Portland, working construction. Jennifer Walsh never existed at all. The hospital has no record of her. The address was always empty. Officer Thompson? He retired last year with full honors. Never been shot. Never been in danger. The voices I've been hearing aren't the dead trying to communicate. They're my own guilt, manifesting as radio transmissions. My own fear that I'm not good enough, that I'm going to make a mistake that costs someone their life. And tonight, that fear became reality. I just got a call from the state police. They found Jessica's car wrapped around a tree on a back road, 15 miles from where she should have been. She'd been there for hours. The impact was, the report says she died instantly, probably around 3:18 a.m. While I was sitting here, recording confessions about imaginary failures, my niece was dying alone on a dark road. While I was listening to voices that existed only in my guilt, the one real voice that needed help couldn't get through. The scanner is quiet now. No more phantom transmissions, no more voices from empty frequencies. Just the steady hiss of static and the sound of my own breathing. 22 years behind this console, and I finally understand the truth. The voices aren't supernatural. They're not the ghosts of people I failed to save. They're the sound of my own conscience, playing back every worst-case scenario, every fear, every doubt. But tonight, while I was listening to imaginary ghosts, I became the dispatcher I was always afraid of being. The one who misses the real call while chasing phantom emergencies. The resignation letter is signed. In 30 minutes, Chief Morrison will arrive, and I'll hand it to him along with my badge and radio. I'll tell him I'm not fit for duty anymore, that I can't trust my own judgment. But I won't tell him about the voices, because now I know they were never really there. The frequencies don't carry the voices of the dead. They carry the fears of the living. And some fears, once they take hold, never let go. This is Sarah Chen, signing off for the last time. If you're listening to this recording, remember, the most dangerous calls aren't the ones you hear. They're the ones you miss while you're listening to echoes. The scanner feeds from 12 different police departments stream into my headphones 24 hours a day. Most people think that's crazy, but they don't understand what you can learn when you really listen. My name is Marcus Webb, and I've been a freelance audio analyst for 8 years, monitoring emergency frequencies for insurance companies, news outlets, and occasionally, private clients who need to know what the police know before the police know they know it. Tonight is different, though. Tonight I'm recording this because I've stumbled onto something that shouldn't exist. A pattern in the scanner traffic that defies explanation. Calls that connect across departments that have never worked together. Voices that appear on multiple frequencies simultaneously, and response times that seem to bend the laws of physics. It started 3 weeks ago in Millfield County, a rural area about 60 miles northeast of Denver. I was monitoring their frequencies as part of a contract with a local news station when I heard something that made me rewind the audio 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. October 3rd, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Millfield County Sheriff's Dispatch received what appeared to be a routine traffic stop call. County 7, this is Deputy Harrison. I've got a silver sedan pulled over on Route 34, mile marker 15, running plates now. Deputy Harrison had been with Millfield for 6 years. Solid cop, by the book, never caused problems for dispatch. His voice was calm, professional. Exactly what you'd expect for a routine traffic stop. Copy, County 7. What's the nature of the stop? Vehicle was weaving slightly, possible DUI. Driver appears cooperative, stepping out of the vehicle now. Standard procedure. I was already moving to switch to another frequency when Harrison's voice came back, but something in his tone had changed. Dispatch, this is strange. The driver says he's been waiting for me. Says he knew I'd pull him over at exactly this location. I leaned closer to my monitors. After 8 years of listening to police calls, you develop an ear for when things start going sideways. County 7, can you clarify? The driver. He's got my business card, my personal business card from the hardware store I worked at before I became a deputy. That was 7 years ago, and I only gave those cards to maybe a dozen people. The hair on my arm stood up. I'd heard thousands of traffic stops, and they never went like this. County 7, can you get identification from the driver? He's already handed it to me. Colorado license, name is Michael Torres, but here's the thing. Dispatch. This license expired in 2018, and the address listed is my grandmother's house. My grandmother's been dead for 4 years. I was recording everything now, my fingers moving across the digital mixing board to isolate Harrison's transmission from background noise. Something was very wrong with this call. County 7, run the plates and ID through the system. What's the driver's current behavior? He's just standing there, smiling. But dispatch, he keeps saying things he shouldn't know. He just told me that my partner Rodriguez called in sick tonight because his daughter has a fever. Rodriguez did call in sick, but he didn't tell anyone why. I pulled up the duty roster for Millfield County. Rodriguez was indeed marked as sick leave for that night. But how would a random traffic stop driver know that? County 7, do you need backup? I think so, dispatch. This guy just told me about the argument I had with my wife this morning. Word for word, what we said to each other. There's no way he could know that. Harrison's voice was getting strained. 8-year veteran, and I could hear genuine fear creeping in. County 7, backup is en route. ETA 4 minutes. But then something happened that I've never heard in 8 years of monitoring police frequencies. The driver's voice came through the radio. Not through Harrison's radio. It was broadcasting on the same frequency, but as a separate transmission. Deputy Harrison, you don't need backup. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to deliver a message. Clear as day, coming through the Millfield County frequency. But civilians don't have access to police radio systems. The encryption alone makes it nearly impossible. Dispatch, are you hearing this? The driver is somehow transmitting on our frequency. County 7, we're not receiving any unauthorized transmissions. Please clarify your situation. That stopped me cold. I was hearing the driver's voice clearly, but dispatch claimed they weren't receiving it. I checked my equipment, ran diagnostics on my receivers. Everything was functioning normally. The driver's voice came through again. The message is for you, Marcus Webb. Yes, you, listening on your equipment in Denver. You're the one who needs to hear this. My blood turned to ice. He was speaking directly to me. A random traffic stop driver in Millfield County somehow knew I was monitoring their frequency. You've been listening to police calls for 8 years, Marcus, but you've never understood what you're really hearing. The frequencies carry more than just radio transmissions. I was frantically checking my setup, looking for any indication that my monitoring equipment had been compromised. But everything looked normal. County 7, what's your status? Are you still in contact with the driver? Harrison's voice came back, confused. Dispatch, the driver just got back in his vehicle and drove away. But he left something on my hood, a business card. What kind of business card, County 7? It's a card for Webb Audio Solutions. Marcus Webb, freelance audio analyst. This is impossible. How did he know someone was monitoring our frequency? Webb Audio Solutions was my company. I'd never given that card to anyone in Millfield County. Had never even been to Millfield County. County 7, please collect the card as evidence and return to station for a full report. The frequency went quiet. I sat in my home office, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of scanner equipment, trying to process what I'd just heard. A traffic stop driver had somehow known I was listening, had known my name and my business, and had left my own business card at the scene. I called Millfield County Sheriff's Department the next morning, spoke to Deputy Harrison directly. He confirmed everything. The strange traffic stop, the business card, the driver who seemed to know impossible things. But when I asked him about the driver transmitting on their frequency, Harrison looked confused. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Webb. The driver never said anything about you. He just handed me the business card and drove away." According to Harrison, there had been no mention of my name, no message about frequencies carrying more than transmissions. But I had it all recorded, every word. That's when I started paying closer attention to the patterns. Over the next 2 weeks, I began noticing connections between calls that shouldn't exist, references to previous incidents that hadn't been broadcast, officers knowing things they shouldn't know, and always, underlying it all, the sense that someone was listening to my listening, that the frequencies I monitored so carefully were monitoring me back. The rain started an hour ago, drumming against the windows of my home office. My scanner setup fills one entire wall: receivers, digital recorders, frequency analyzers, and signal processors. To most people, it looks like the lair of a conspiracy theorist. But to me, it's a window into the hidden conversations that keep a city running. The second incident happened in Boulder County, 40 miles from Millfield. October 7th, 2024. I'd been monitoring their frequencies for a missing person case when I heard something that made me question everything I thought I knew about radio communications. 3:22 a.m. The night dispatcher, a woman named Carol Martinez, received what started as a routine welfare check call. "Boulder 14, this is Detective Ryan Sullivan. I need you to send a unit to 1247 Maple Street for a welfare check. Elderly resident, Mrs. Eleanor Hoffman, age 73. Her daughter, called from Phoenix, says she can't reach her mother." Sullivan was one of Boulder County's senior detectives. 23 years on the force, specializing in missing persons and elderly welfare cases. His voice carried the weight of experience, the kind of calm authority that comes from handling thousands of similar calls. Copy: Boulder 14. Unit 31 is en route to 1247 Maple Street. ETA approximately 8 minutes. I was monitoring this call because Eleanor Hoffman's daughter had hired me to track police response times, insurance fraud investigation. She suspected her mother was filing false claims. Routine corporate work that paid well. But then Sullivan's voice came back with something that immediately caught my attention. "Carol, I need you to check something for me. Pull up the call logs for this address from exactly 1 year ago. October 7th, 2023. Carol Martinez had been working dispatch for Boulder County for 15 years. She knew how to find information quickly. Detective Sullivan, I'm showing no calls to 1247 Maple Street on October 7th, 2023. In fact, I'm not showing any calls to that address in the past 18 months. Sullivan's voice came back, but now there was confusion in it. "That's impossible, Carol. I responded to this exact address on October 7th, 2023. Welfare check for Eleanor Hoffman, age 73. Her daughter called from Phoenix because she couldn't reach her mother." I felt that familiar chill. The same words, the same details, exactly 1 year apart. I was already pulling up my own archived recordings, searching for anything from Boulder County on October 7th, 2023. "Detective, I've double-checked the system. No calls, no reports, no incidents at 1247 Maple Street on that date. Carol, I need you to trust me on this. I have a very clear memory of responding to this address exactly 1 year ago. Can you check with records to see if there was any kind of system error or data loss?" That's when I found it. In my archived recordings from October 7th, 2023, there was indeed a call to 1247 Maple Street. Welfare check for Eleanor Hoffman. Detective Sullivan responding. But according to official records, the call had never happened. Unit 31 arrived at the address. Officer Janet Rodriguez, 5-year veteran, reliable and thorough. Boulder 14, Unit 31 on scene at 1247 Maple Street. Residence appears secure, lights are on inside. I'm going to make contact with the resident. 3 minutes passed. Then Rodriguez's voice came back, but she sounded shaken. Detective Sullivan, I need you to respond to this location immediately. We have a situation. Unit 31, what's the nature of the situation? Sir, Mrs. Hoffman is fine. She's healthy, alert, and very much alive. But she's been expecting us. She says Detective Sullivan visited her exactly 1 year ago, and she's been waiting for him to come back. Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Then, Unit 31, I'm en route. Don't let Mrs. Hoffman leave the residence. While Sullivan was driving to the scene, I did something I'd never done before. I called the Boulder County Sheriff's Department directly and asked to speak to Detective Sullivan. I identified myself as a freelance audio analyst and explained that I had recordings of a similar call from exactly 1 year ago. Sullivan took my call, and what he told me made my hands shake. Mr. Webb, I've been thinking about this for the past 20 minutes. I have a clear memory of responding to this address last year. I remember talking to Mrs. Hoffman. I remember her daughter calling from Phoenix. I remember every detail of that call. Detective, I have that call recorded. Would you like me to play it back for you? Play it. I played the archived recording from October 7th, 2023. Sullivan's voice, 1 year younger, responding to the exact same address for the exact same welfare check. When the recording ended, Sullivan was quiet for a long time. Mr. Webb, that's impossible. I remember that call happening, but according to our records, it never occurred. And now, exactly 1 year later, I'm responding to the identical call. Detective, there's something else. In the recording from last year, you asked dispatch to check for previous calls to this address. You asked them to check October 7th, 2022. Dead silence on the phone. Mr. Webb, are you telling me this has happened before? I was already searching my archives, going back 2 years. October 7th, 2022. Boulder County frequencies. And there it was. Detective Sullivan responding to 1247 Maple Street for a welfare check on Eleanor Hoffman, age 73. Detective, I have recordings of you responding to this exact call on October 7th, 2022, and October 7th, 2023. Today makes 3 years in a row. Sullivan's voice when he responded was barely above a whisper. Mr. Webb, I need you to meet me at the station. Bring everything you have. But that's when the transmission that changed everything came through. Not from Sullivan's radio, not from Unit 31. A new voice, elderly and female, broadcasting on the Boulder County frequency. Detective Sullivan, this is Eleanor Hoffman. I can hear you talking about me. Sullivan's voice cracked back immediately. Mrs. Hoffman, how are you accessing this frequency? Civilians don't have access to police radio. I'm not accessing anything, Detective. I'm just talking, and somehow you can hear me, just like you could hear me last year, and the year before that. Rodriguez's voice came through from the scene. Detective, Mrs. Hoffman is sitting right in front of me. Her mouth isn't moving, but I can hear her voice on the radio. Eleanor Hoffman's voice continued, calm and matter-of-fact. Mr. Webb, I know you're listening. You've been recording these calls for 3 years now. Do you want to know why they keep happening? My throat was dry. I managed to croak out a response, not sure if anyone could hear me. "Mrs. Hoffman, I'm listening." Every year, on October 7th, my daughter calls the police because she can't reach me. But Mr. Webb, my daughter died in a car accident in Phoenix 4 years ago. She's been dead longer than these calls have been happening. The frequency went completely silent. Not just quiet, dead silent. Like someone had turned off every radio in Boulder County. Rodriguez's voice finally cracked through. "Detective, Mrs. Hoffman just told me her daughter died 4 years ago. But the welfare check request came from her daughter in Phoenix tonight." Sullivan's voice was hollow. "Unit 31, I need you to confirm something for me. Check with dispatch about the original call. Who requested the welfare check?" Carol Martinez's voice came back after a few minutes. "Detective, I've reviewed the call log. The welfare check was requested by Eleanor Hoffman's daughter calling from Phoenix. But I've just run a background check, and Eleanor Hoffman's daughter, Patricia Hoffman, died in a car accident in Phoenix on October 7th, 2020. The same date. Every year, on the anniversary of her daughter's death, Eleanor Hoffman received a welfare check requested by her dead daughter. I drove to Boulder County that night, met with Sullivan and Rodriguez at the station, played them the recordings from all 3 years. Each call identical, each response identical, each time happening on October 7th. But the official record showed that only tonight's call had ever happened. The previous 2 years existed only in my recordings and in the memories of the officers who'd responded. Mrs. Hoffman was released after questioning. She had no explanation for how her voice had come through police radio, no memory of speaking to us at all. But she did say something that I'll never forget. "My daughter calls me every year on the anniversary. I can't hear her voice, but I know she's trying to reach me. Maybe you people can hear her because you have better equipment." Detective Sullivan retired 2 weeks later. 23 years on the force, and he said he couldn't trust his own memories anymore. But I kept the recordings. 3 years of identical calls, happening on the same date, requested by a dead woman for her still-living mother. The pattern was becoming clear. The frequencies weren't just carrying current transmissions. They were carrying echoes of conversations that should have ended years ago, and someone, or something, was using those echoes to reach across the barrier between the living and the dead. The rain's getting heavier now, and my scanner equipment is picking up more interference than usual. But underneath the static, I can hear voices. Faint, but getting stronger. October 7th is still 2 days away, but I'm already hearing Eleanor Hoffman's daughter calling from Phoenix, asking for a welfare check on her mother. Some calls never end. They just keep repeating, year after year, until someone finally understands what they're really trying to say. The third incident shattered everything I thought I understood about radio frequencies and linear time. October 12th, 2024. I was monitoring Jefferson County when I heard something that made me question the very nature of reality itself. It started with what seemed like a routine domestic disturbance call. 2:17 a.m. The night was quiet, most frequencies carrying only occasional patrol check-ins, when suddenly Jefferson County's emergency channel erupted with urgent transmissions. "Jefferson 23, this is Officer Lisa Park. I need immediate backup at 892 Oakwood Drive. Domestic disturbance, possible assault in progress. I can hear screaming from inside the residence." Officer Park had been with Jefferson County for 8 years. She was known for her calm demeanor and professional handling of domestic calls, but her voice carried an edge of urgency that made me adjust my recording levels. "Copy. Jefferson 23. Units 15 and 31 are en route. ETA 6 minutes. What's your current position?" "I'm in the driveway. The front door is open, and I can see overturned furniture. I'm hearing a woman screaming for help and what sounds like a man shouting threats. Standard domestic violence protocol. I'd monitored hundreds of these calls over the years. But then Park's voice came back with something that made my blood freeze. "Dispatch, I need you to run a history check on this address. I have a feeling we've been here before. Jefferson, 23. I'm showing multiple calls to 892 Oakwood Drive over the past 2 years. Last incident was... That's strange. Last incident was October 12th, 2022. Exactly 2 years ago. Officer Lisa Park responding to domestic disturbance. I was already searching my archives, my fingers flying over the keyboard. October 12th, 2022. Jefferson County. There it was. Officer Park responding to 892 Oakwood Drive for a domestic disturbance. Dispatch, run the details on that 2022 call. What was the outcome? Jefferson, 23. The 2022 call resulted in... This can't be right. The report shows that Officer Lisa Park was fatally shot while responding to a domestic disturbance at 892 Oakwood Drive. But that's impossible because The frequency went silent. Complete dead air for 15 seconds. Then Park's voice came back, but she sounded shaken. Dispatch, repeat that last transmission. Did you say I was fatally shot at this address? Jefferson, 23. I'm showing conflicting information in the system. One report shows you were killed at that address 2 years ago. Another shows you completed the call without incident. I need you to hold your position until backup arrives. I was frantically pulling up news archives, police reports, obituaries. Lisa Park, Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. And there it was, a news article from October 12th, 2022. Officer Lisa Park, 34, killed in the line of duty while responding to a domestic violence call at 892 Oakwood Drive. But she was alive. She was on the radio right now, responding to the same address. Dispatch, I'm going to approach the residence. I can still hear the woman screaming. Jefferson, 23, hold your position. Do not approach until backup arrives. But Park was already moving. I could hear her footsteps on gravel, then on wooden porch steps. Jefferson, 23, I'm at the front door. I can see into the living room. There's a man standing over a woman on the floor. He's holding what appears to be a firearm. My heart was pounding. I was listening to a dead police officer walk into the same situation that had killed her 2 years ago. Jefferson, 23, get out of there. Return to your vehicle immediately. That's when I heard the gunshot. A single blast, loud and clear through Park's radio, then silence. Jefferson, 23, report your status. Officer Park, respond. Dead air. Then, faintly, Park's voice, but different now, weaker. Dispatch, I'm hit. The subject, he was waiting for me. He knew I was coming. He said, you came back, just like I knew you would. Backup units were screaming toward the address, but I already knew they'd be too late, just like they'd been too late 2 years ago. Jefferson, 23, help is on the way. Stay with me, Lisa. Dispatch, he's standing over me now. He's saying something about how this happens every 2 years, how he's been waiting for me to come back. Park's voice was fading. Tell my daughter. Tell her I tried to save that woman. Tell her I tried to do the right thing. The transmission ended. Units arrived at 892 Oakwood Drive to find Officer Lisa Park dead in the doorway, killed by a single gunshot to the chest. The suspect, Robert Hendricks, was found in the living room with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His wife, Maria Hendricks, was unharmed but traumatized. But here's what the news reports didn't mention. According to the official investigation, this exact scenario had played out 2 years earlier. same address, same suspect, same victim. Officer Lisa Park had been killed at 892 Oakwood Drive on October 12, 2022, and again on October 12, 2024. I had recordings of both incidents, identical in every detail except one. In the 2024 version, the suspect seemed to know that Park would return. I called Jefferson County Sheriff's Department the next morning, spoke to the watch commander, Captain Robert Chen. "Captain, I'm calling about Officer Park. I have recordings of her responding to the same address 2 years ago." "Mr. Webb, I don't know what you're talking about. Officer Park was killed last night. This was her first and only response to that address." "Captain, I have audio recordings that prove otherwise. She died at that address 2 years ago, and last night she died there again." Long pause. "Mr. Webb, I think you're confused. Officer Park joined our department 18 months ago. She couldn't have responded to any calls 2 years ago because she wasn't working for us yet. But I had the recordings, and I had the news articles. 2 identical deaths 2 years apart at the same address. That's when I started digging deeper into the patterns. Eleanor Hoffman's daughter calling from Phoenix every year on October 7th. Officer Park dying at 892 Oakwood Drive every 2 years on October 12th. The strange man who'd left my business card at a traffic stop in Millfield County. All of these incidents involved time loops. Events that repeated on specific dates with the same people having the same conversations, making the same choices, dying the same deaths. But only I seemed to remember the previous iterations. Everyone else experienced each loop as if it were happening for the first time. 3 days later, I received a phone call that changed everything. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. "Mr. Webb, this is Officer Lisa Park." My blood went cold. Lisa Park was dead. I'd listened to her die. "I know this is confusing, but I need you to listen carefully. I'm calling from October 12th, 2020. I'm about to respond to 892 Oakwood Drive for the first time." I checked my calendar. October 15th, 2024, 3 days after Park's death. "Officer Park, how are you calling me?" You died 3 days ago." "From your perspective, yes, but Mr. Webb, time isn't linear on the frequencies. The radio waves carry conversations across years, across decades. I'm calling from 2020, but I can hear your response from 2024. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my recording equipment. "Officer Park, if you're calling from 2020, can you prevent what happens? Can you avoid going to that address?" "I've tried, Mr. Webb. I've tried so many times. But the call keeps coming in and I keep responding. Because if I don't, Maria Hendricks dies, and if I do, I die." The line was crackling with static, but her voice was clear. "The loops aren't random, Mr. Webb. They're created by impossible choices. Situations where someone has to die, where there's no good outcome. The frequencies trap those moments, replay them endlessly, trying to find a solution that doesn't exist. Officer Park, how many times have you died at that address?" 7 times every 2 years for 14 years. The first time was October 12th, 2010. I've been trying to save Maria Hendricks for 14 years, and I've failed every time. The connection was getting weaker, more static. "Mr. Webb, you're the only one who remembers the loops. You're the only one who can hear us across time. We need you to find a way to break the pattern." The line went dead. I sat in my office, surrounded by years of recordings, trying to understand what I'd just learned. The frequencies weren't just carrying current transmissions. They were carrying conversations across time itself. And somehow, I was the only one who could hear them all. Officer Lisa Park was trapped in a 14-year loop, dying over and over again, trying to save the same woman. Eleanor Hoffman's daughter was trapped in an annual loop, calling for welfare checks from beyond the grave. And I was the only one who remembered. The only one who could potentially break the cycles. But how do you stop time loops that span decades? How do you save people who are already dead? The rain stopped, but the static in my equipment is getting worse. I can hear voices now, dozens of them, all calling from different points in time. All trapped in their own loops, all asking for help. And all of them seem to know my name. The fourth incident made me realize I wasn't just observing these time loops. I was becoming part of them. October 18th, 2024. I was monitoring Adams County when I heard my own voice coming through their emergency frequency, having a conversation I'd never had. It started at 4:33 a.m. I was alone in my office, surrounded by the familiar glow of scanner displays, when Adams County's dispatch channel crackled to life with an unusual transmission. Adams Control, this is Detective Sarah Morrison. I'm en route to 1455 Pine Ridge Road for a suspicious death. I have a civilian consultant joining me at the scene. Detective Morrison was a 15-year veteran, specializing in unexplained deaths and cold cases. I'd monitored her calls before. She was thorough, methodical, and rarely requested civilian assistance. Copy, Detective Morrison. What's the nature of the civilian consultation? I have an audio analyst named Marcus Webb. He's been monitoring police frequencies and has recordings that might be relevant to our investigation. I nearly dropped my coffee. Detective Morrison was talking about me, but I'd never spoken to her, never been contacted by Adams County, never been to Pine Ridge Road. Detective Morrison, can you provide more details about the civilian consultant? Marcus Webb, freelance audio analyst. He's been tracking patterns in police radio transmissions that correlate with our unsolved cases. He claims to have recordings of conversations that occurred before the crimes were committed. My blood ran cold. I did have such recordings, the time loop conversations I'd been documenting for weeks, but I'd never shared them with any police department. Adams Control, this is Marcus Webb. That was my voice coming through the radio, but I wasn't speaking. I was sitting in my office, listening to myself have a conversation I'd never had. Mr. Webb, you're on the Adams County frequency. Can you confirm your location? I'm at 1455 Pine Ridge Road with Detective Morrison. We're examining the body of Robert Hendricks, found deceased in his living room with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Robert Hendricks, the same man who'd killed Officer Lisa Park at 892 Oakwood Drive. But that was in Jefferson County, not Adams County. Mr. Webb, can you describe what you're observing at the scene? My own voice, calm and professional, continued the conversation I wasn't having. Detective Morrison, based on my analysis of the radio frequencies, this death is connected to a series of temporal anomalies. Robert Hendricks has been dying by suicide every 2 years since 2010, always after killing a police officer. Detective Morrison's voice came through clearly. Mr. Webb, that's impossible. Robert Hendricks has no criminal history, no previous contact with law enforcement. This appears to be his first violent act. Detective, I have recordings of this exact conversation from previous iterations. You and I have investigated Robert Hendricks' death multiple times. Always on October 18th. Always with the same outcome. I was frantically checking my archives, searching for any record of previous conversations with Detective Morrison. Nothing. I'd never spoken to her before. Mr. Webb, I need you to clarify something. Are you claiming this has happened before? Detective Morrison, this is the 5th time we've had this conversation. The first was October 18th, 2016. Each time, we discover that Robert Hendricks is trapped in a loop where he kills Officer Lisa Park every 2 years, then takes his own life. I was listening to myself reveal information I'd never shared with anyone. Information that was accurate, but that I'd never told Detective Morrison. Mr. Webb, if this is the 5th iteration, why don't I remember the previous conversations? Because you're not outside the loop, Detective. You're part of it. Every time we investigate Hendricks' death, you forget about it afterward. Only I retain the memories across iterations. That's when I realized what was happening. I wasn't just monitoring these time loops, I was actively participating in them. Somehow, my consciousness was splitting across multiple timelines, having conversations in one reality while observing them in another. The conversation continued, with my other self explaining details about the temporal anomalies to Detective Morrison. But here in my office, I was hearing it all for the first time. Detective Morrison, there's something else you need to understand. These loops aren't random occurrences. They're created by traumatic events that create paradoxes in the timeline. What kind of paradoxes, Mr. Webb? Officer Lisa Park dies trying to save Maria Hendricks. But if she doesn't respond to the call, Maria dies instead. The universe can't resolve the paradox, so it creates a loop where both outcomes exist simultaneously. Detective Morrison's voice was getting more strained. Mr. Webb, are you saying that reality is broken? Not broken, Detective. Fragmented. The radio frequencies are carrying conversations across these fragments, allowing us to hear echoes of events that happened in parallel timelines. I was scribbling notes frantically, trying to understand the implications of what my other self was explaining. If I was right, if both versions of me were right, then the scanner equipment wasn't just picking up radio transmissions. It was picking up conversations from alternate realities. Detective Morrison, I need you to check something. In your reality, did Officer Lisa Park die on October 12th, 2024? No, Mr. Webb. Officer Lisa Park is alive and well. She's been with Jefferson County for 18 months. No incidents. In Detective Morrison's reality, Officer Park was still alive. But in my reality, she died 3 days ago. We were investigating the same case from different timeline fragments. Mr. Webb, this is getting beyond my expertise. I think we need to involve federal authorities. Detective, we've tried that before. In the 2018 iteration, we contacted the FBI. They conducted an investigation, found no evidence of temporal anomalies, and classified the case as closed. My other self was right. I had no memory of contacting the FBI, but somehow I knew it had happened in a previous loop. What about the 2020 iteration, Mr. Webb? In 2020, we tried to prevent the loop by arresting Robert Hendricks before he could kill Officer Park. But arresting him in one timeline doesn't affect the other timelines. The loop continued. Detective Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Webb, if we can't break the loop and we can't prevent the deaths, what's the point of investigating? Because each iteration gives us more information. Each time we investigate, we learn more about how the loops work, how the timelines intersect. That's when my other self said something that made my hands shake. Detective Morrison, I need you to relay a message to the Marcus Webb who's monitoring this conversation from his office in Denver. He was talking to me. My other self knew I was listening. Tell him that the loops are expanding. Conversation continued, with my other self explaining details about the temporal anomalies to Detective Morrison. But here in my office, I was hearing it all for the first time. Detective Morrison, there's something else you need to understand. These loops aren't random occurrences. They're created by traumatic events that create paradoxes in the timeline. What kind of paradoxes, Mr. Webb? Officer Lisa Park dies trying to save Maria Hendricks. But if she doesn't respond to the call, Maria dies instead. The universe can't resolve the paradox, so it creates a loop where both outcomes exist simultaneously. Detective Morrison's voice was getting more strained. Mr. Webb, are you saying that reality is broken? Not broken, Detective. Fragmented. The radio frequencies are carrying conversations across these fragments, allowing us to hear echoes of events that happened in parallel timelines. I was scribbling notes frantically, trying to understand the implications of what my other self was explaining. If I was right, if both versions of me were right, then the scanner equipment wasn't just picking up radio transmissions. It was picking up conversations from alternate realities. Detective Morrison, I need you to check something. In your reality, did Officer Lisa Park die on October 12th, 2024? No, Mr. Webb. Officer Lisa Park is alive and well. She's been with Jefferson County for 18 months, no incidents. In Detective Morrison's reality, Officer Park was still alive. But in my reality, she died 3 days ago. We were investigating the same case from different timeline fragments. Mr. Webb, this is getting beyond my expertise. I think we need to involve federal authorities. Detective, we've tried that before. In the 2018 iteration, we contacted the FBI. They conducted an investigation, found no evidence of temporal anomalies, and classified the case as closed. My other self was right. I had no memory of contacting the FBI, but somehow I knew it had happened in a previous loop. What about the 2020 iteration, Mr. Webb? In 2020, we tried to prevent the loop by arresting Robert Hendricks before he could kill Officer Park. But arresting him in one timeline doesn't affect the other timelines. The loop continued. Detective Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Webb, if we can't break the loop and we can't prevent the deaths, what's the point of investigating? Because each iteration gives us more information. Each time we investigate, we learn more about how the loops work, how the timelines intersect. That's when my other self said something that made my hands shake. Detective Morrison, I need you to relay a message to the Marcus Webb who's monitoring this conversation from his office in Denver. He was talking to me. My other self knew I was listening. Tell him that the loops are expanding. What started as isolated incidents in individual counties is becoming a network. The temporal anomalies are connecting, creating a web of parallel realities. Detective Morrison's voice was confused. Mr. Webb, I don't understand. How can you send a message to yourself? Because consciousness isn't bound by the same rules as physical reality. My awareness exists across multiple timelines simultaneously. The Marcus Webb listening to this conversation is experiencing the same temporal fragmentation, but from a different perspective. The transmission was getting weaker, more static. Detective Morrison, the most important thing you need to understand is that these loops aren't accidents. Someone or something is creating them deliberately. Who would do that, Mr. Webb? I don't know yet, but in each iteration we get closer to the answer. Tell the other Marcus Webb to keep monitoring the frequencies. Tell him to document everything. The transmission ended with a burst of static. I sat in my office, trying to process what I'd just heard. I was simultaneously investigating temporal anomalies with Detective Morrison while monitoring my own investigation from a parallel timeline. The loops weren't just affecting the people who died in them, they were affecting me too. My consciousness was splitting across multiple realities, allowing me to exist in several timelines at once. But if my other self was right, if someone was creating these loops deliberately, then I needed to find out who and why. I pulled up my contact database and searched for Detective Sarah Morrison, Adams County Sheriff's Department. No such person existed. According to official records, Adams County had no detective by that name. But I just listened to myself have a detailed conversation with her about a case that officially didn't exist. The storm outside was getting worse, and my equipment was picking up more interference. But underneath the static, I could hear other conversations. Other versions of myself, talking to other detectives in other timelines, all of us investigating the same mystery from different angles. All of us trying to understand why reality was fracturing along the frequencies. And all of us hearing the same warning. The loops were expanding, connecting, becoming something larger than any of us could handle alone. The rain hammered against my windows, but I kept listening. Because somewhere in the static, in the conversations between timelines, was the answer to who was doing this, and more importantly, how to stop them. The fifth incident revealed the true scope of what I was dealing with. October 24th, 2024. I wasn't just monitoring isolated time loops anymore. I was witnessing the birth of a temporal network that spanned multiple states and decades. It started with what I initially thought was equipment malfunction. At 3:47 a.m., all 12 of my scanner feeds began receiving the same transmission simultaneously. Every police department I monitored, from rural counties to major metropolitan areas, was carrying identical audio. This is central dispatch to all units. We have a code black scenario in progress. All temporal monitoring stations are to report status immediately. Central dispatch. I'd never heard that designation before. It wasn't tied to any specific department or jurisdiction. The voice was professional, authoritative, but with an edge that suggested this was far from routine. Temporal monitoring stations? What the hell is a temporal monitoring station? That was Detective Morrison's voice, but she was broadcasting on frequencies from 6 different counties simultaneously. I could hear her in Adams County, Jefferson County, Boulder County, Millfield County, and 2 others I didn't recognize. Detective Morrison, this is Station Alpha. We're reading massive temporal fluctuations across the network. Time loops are beginning to synchronize. Station Alpha. Another designation I'd never encountered, but the voice was familiar. It was my own voice, but different. Older, more tired. Station Alpha, this is Detective Morrison. I need clarification on the temporal monitoring network. Our department has no record of any such system. Detective, that's because you're inside the loops. From your perspective, the network doesn't exist. But from our perspective, monitoring from outside the temporal fragments, we can see the entire structure. I was hearing myself explain the situation to Detective Morrison. But this wasn't the same conversation I'd monitored 6 days earlier. This was something new, something bigger. Station Alpha, how many monitoring stations are in the network? Currently active, 47 stations across 19 states. But the network is expanding rapidly. We're detecting new temporal anomalies every 6 hours. 47 stations, 19 states. This wasn't just a local phenomenon, it was nationwide. Station Alpha, this is Station Beta. We're monitoring the Hendricks Loop in Jefferson County. The subject has deviated from his normal pattern. Station Beta's voice was also familiar. It was Officer Lisa Park, but she sounded different. More knowledgeable, like she'd been doing this for years. Station Beta, describe the deviation. Robert Hendricks is aware of the loop. He's been talking to his victims about previous iterations. He knows he's killed Officer Park 7 times, and he's asking her why she keeps coming back. The loops were becoming self-aware. The people trapped in them were starting to remember the previous iterations. Station Beta, has Officer Park retained any memories from previous loops? Negative, Station Alpha. She's still experiencing each iteration as if it's the first time, but Hendrix is somehow accessing information from all 7 iterations simultaneously. That's when I realized what was happening. The temporal network wasn't just monitoring the loops, it was composed of people who'd been extracted from the loops. My other self wasn't just investigating the anomalies. He was part of a larger organization dedicated to understanding and managing them. This is Station Gamma. We're detecting a new loop forming in Montana. Small town called Millerton. Local sheriff's department is reporting calls from citizens who died in a fire 3 years ago. Station Gamma's voice was eerily familiar. It was the man who'd left my business card at the traffic stop in Millfield County. Station Gamma, can you identify the trigger event for the Montana Loop? The fire started during a domestic dispute. Sheriff's deputy tried to evacuate the building, but the family refused to leave. Deputy had to choose between forcing them out or letting them burn. Another impossible choice. Another situation where someone had to die no matter what decision was made. Station Alpha, this is Station Delta. We're monitoring the Hoffman Loop in Boulder County. The annual callback is scheduled for October 7th, but we're detecting early transmission activity. Station Delta was Carol Martinez, the Boulder County dispatcher, but she was speaking with the authority of someone who'd been monitoring these loops for years. Station Delta, describe the early activity. Patricia Hoffman is trying to call outside the scheduled date. She's been attempting to contact her mother every day for the past week, but the calls are only connecting on October 7th. The loops were becoming more unstable. The temporal boundaries that kept them contained were starting to break down. All stations, this is Central Dispatch. We have a priority situation. The primary observer is experiencing temporal fragmentation. Primary observer. They were talking about me. The original me, sitting in my office, monitoring these conversations. Central Dispatch, this is Station Alpha. The primary observer is hearing our communications. Affirmative, Station Alpha. His consciousness is splitting across multiple timeline fragments. He's simultaneously monitoring the loops from outside while participating in the network from inside. I was the primary observer, the person whose scanner equipment had first detected the temporal anomalies. But I was also part of the network, extracted from my timeline to help monitor the loops. Central Dispatch, what are the implications of the primary observer's fragmentation? If his consciousness splits completely, we lose our anchor to the original timeline. Without that anchor, the network becomes unstable. My hands were shaking as I reached for my recording equipment. If I was the anchor to the original timeline, then my mental state was affecting the entire network. This is Station Alpha to Primary Observer. I know you're listening. I need you to understand what's happening. My other self was speaking directly to me. The temporal monitoring network exists because your consciousness created it. When you first detected the loops, your mind couldn't accept that reality was fragmenting. So, you created alternate versions of yourself to help process the information. I was talking to myself. All of the stations, all of the monitors, all of the investigators, they were all fragments of my own consciousness, split across multiple timelines. Primary Observer, Detective Morrison, Officer Park, all of the people you've been listening to, they're all you. Different aspects of your personality, trying to understand the same mystery from different angles. The room was spinning. I was the only real person in any of these conversations. Everyone else was a projection of my fragmenting mind. But the loops are real, Primary Observer. The deaths, the temporal anomalies, the impossible choices, they're all happening. You're not imagining them. Then who's creating them? I spoke out loud for the first time in weeks, and my voice was immediately picked up by all 12 scanner feeds. Primary observer, you're creating them. Your consciousness is so focused on understanding tragedy, on preventing deaths, that you're unconsciously creating scenarios where death is inevitable. I was the one creating the time loops. My desire to save everyone, to prevent every tragedy, was creating paradoxes that fractured reality. Every time you monitor a police call involving death, you unconsciously create a loop where that death becomes inevitable. Your mind can't accept that some people can't be saved. Eleanor Hoffman's daughter, calling from beyond the grave. Officer Park, dying over and over trying to save the same woman. Robert Hendricks, trapped in a cycle of violence and suicide. All of them were manifestations of my inability to accept that sometimes, no matter what you do, people die. Primary observer, the network is failing. Your consciousness is fragmenting too rapidly. We need you to make a choice. What choice? Accept that death is part of life, and let the loops end. Or continue creating them, and lose yourself completely in the temporal fragments. I looked around my office, at the thousands of hours of recordings, at the equipment that had shown me voices that shouldn't exist. All of it was my mind's way of trying to process the reality of death. If I let the loops end, do the people in them die? They've already died, primary observer. The loops are your way of keeping them alive. But keeping them alive in fragments isn't really saving them. The scanner feeds were getting weaker, more static. The network was collapsing as my consciousness pulled back together. Primary observer, it's time to let go. I reached for the power switch on my main scanner. My hand hesitated over the button. Will I still be able to hear them? Number. But you'll be able to accept that they're gone. I pressed the button. The scanner went silent. For the first time in months, I couldn't hear voices calling from beyond death. Couldn't hear the endless loops of tragedy and loss. Just silence. And for the first time in years, that silence felt like peace. But as I sat in the quiet of my office, I realized something disturbing. The network hadn't collapsed completely. I could still hear faint transmissions, voices calling from the static, and they were all asking the same question. Marcus, are you still listening? The loops weren't ending. They were just getting quieter. And somewhere in the static I could hear new voices, new tragedies, new impossible choices. The network was rebuilding itself, and I was still its anchor, whether I wanted to be or not. The sixth incident forced me to confront the most terrifying possibility yet, that I wasn't the only one creating these temporal loops. October 30th, 2024. 6 days after I'd shut down my scanner network, I discovered that the voices had never stopped. They'd just learned to hide better. I'd been trying to live normally, to accept the silence, to convince myself that the loops were products of my fractured mind. But at 2:19 a.m., my landline phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized, my own office line. I answered, knowing I shouldn't. Marcus, this is Detective Morrison. I need you to listen very carefully. Her voice was different now, strained, frightened in a way I'd never heard before. Detective Morrison, I shut down the network. The loops should have ended. That's what we thought too. But Marcus, we were wrong. The loops aren't ending. They're evolving. And they're not all coming from your consciousness. I felt the familiar chill. The loops were supposed to be over. Detective, what do you mean they're not all from my consciousness? Some of them are older than you are. Some of them started before you were even born. You didn't create all the loops, Marcus. You just learned how to hear them. I was pacing my office now, my hands shaking. Detective, if I didn't create them, who did? That's what we need to find out. But Marcus, there's something else. The person who's been creating the older loops, they know about you. They know about the network. Through the phone, I could hear Scanner chatter in the background. The network was still active, still monitoring, but now it was operating without my direct involvement. Detective Morrison, where are you calling from? I'm in what we're calling the archive. It's a temporal space outside the normal timeline where all the loop data is stored. Marcus, there are thousands of them. Thousands of loops going back decades. Thousands of loops. My mind reeled at the implications. Detective, can you show me the archive? You're already here, Marcus. You just don't realize it yet. The phone line went dead. But immediately my office began to change. The walls became transparent, and I could see through them into vast spaces filled with monitors, each one showing a different temporal loop. I was standing in the archive. Not physically, but my consciousness had been pulled into the temporal space that existed between the loops. Detective Morrison was there, but she looked different, more solid, more real than she'd ever seemed in the radio transmissions. Welcome to the archive, Marcus. This is where all the loops are stored, cataloged, and maintained. The space around us was impossibly vast. Thousands of monitors showed different scenes. Police officers responding to calls, people dying in accidents, families receiving terrible news, all of them caught in endless loops. Detective, who built this place? We don't know, but we found evidence that it's been operating for at least 70 years, maybe longer. She led me to a section of monitors that showed older loops, black and white footage of police officers from the 1950s, responding to calls that repeated endlessly. This loop has been running since 1953. A police officer named Robert Chen responds to a bank robbery every day. He dies in the shootout every time, but he keeps coming back the next day. Robert Chen. The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Detective, why are you showing me this? Because Robert Chen was your grandfather. He died in a bank robbery in 1953, but he's been trapped in this loop for 70 years. My grandfather. I'd been told he died in the line of duty, but I'd never known the details. Marcus, the loops aren't random. They're connected to specific bloodlines, specific families. Your ability to hear the temporal frequencies, it's hereditary. Detective Morrison led me to another section of monitors. These showed loops from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. All of them featured people with the last name Chen. Your family has been caught in temporal loops for generations. Each generation produces someone who can hear the frequencies, someone who becomes trapped in the system. I was staring at monitor after monitor, watching my relatives die over and over again in different loops. Detective, who's creating these loops? Who's targeting my family? We think it's someone who's been trapped in the archive for so long that they've become part of the system itself. Someone who's learned how to manipulate the temporal frequencies. She led me to the center of the archive, where a massive monitor showed a single, continuous loop. An old man sitting at a desk, surrounded by radio equipment, listening to police scanner traffic. This is the source loop. It's been running since 1947. The man's name is Dr. Edmund Reeves, and he was the first person to discover the temporal frequencies. Dr. Reeves looked familiar, but I couldn't place where I'd seen him before. Detective, what happened to Dr. Reeves? He became obsessed with preventing tragedies. He started experimenting with the frequencies, trying to create temporal loops that would allow him to save people who'd already died. The monitor showed Dr. Reeves working frantically at his equipment, adjusting dials, speaking into microphones, trying to reach across time. But the loops he created became self-sustaining. they started feeding on the temporal energy of the people trapped inside them, and eventually they started creating new loops on their own. Detective Morrison's voice was getting more strained. Marcus, Dr. Reeves, is still alive. He's been trapped in his loop for 77 years, but he's learned how to project his consciousness into other loops. He's been creating new ones, targeting specific families. Why my family? Because your family has the strongest sensitivity to the temporal frequencies. Each generation produces someone who can hear the loops, someone who can potentially help him escape. The massive monitor flickered, and suddenly Dr. Reeves was looking directly at me. Marcus Webb, I've been waiting for you. His voice came from everywhere at once, filling the archive. Dr. Reeves, why are you doing this? Why are you trapping people in loops? Because death is an error, Marcus. A mistake in the universe that can be corrected. These loops allow people to live forever, to experience their final moments without actually dying. I looked around at the thousands of monitors, at the people trapped in endless cycles of death and rebirth. This isn't living, Doctor. Reeves, this is torture. It's preparation, Marcus. I'm preparing an army of the dead, people who've experienced death so many times that they're no longer afraid of it. When I have enough of them, I'll be able to break out of my loop and reshape reality itself. The archive began to shake. The monitors flickered, and some of them went dark. Dr. Reeves, I won't help you. I won't let you trap more people. You don't have a choice, Marcus. You're already part of the system. Your consciousness is split across multiple loops, and each fragment is feeding energy into the archive. He was right. I could feel parts of myself scattered across different timelines, all of them trapped in the same system. But I can offer you a trade, Marcus. Help me escape, and I'll release your family from their loops. Your grandfather, your uncles, your cousins, all of them can finally rest. I looked at the monitors showing my family members, trapped in endless cycles of death. And if I refuse, then you'll join them. You'll become another monitor in the archive, another source of temporal energy for my experiments. Detective Morrison grabbed my arm. Marcus, don't trust him. He's been making the same offer to every generation of your family for 70 years. He never keeps his promises. The archive was becoming unstable. Monitors were going dark, and I could feel my consciousness being pulled back toward my physical body. Dr. Reeves, I need time to think. You have until Halloween, Marcus, October 31st. That's when the temporal barriers are weakest. Help me escape, or join your family in eternal repetition. The archive collapsed around me, and I was back in my office, sitting at my desk, phone in my hand. But now I understood the truth. The loops weren't just temporal anomalies. They were a trap. Dr. Reeves had been using them to harvest temporal energy, building power for his ultimate escape. And I was the key he'd been waiting for. I had less than 24 hours to decide. Help a madman escape his temporal prison, or condemn myself and my family to eternal loops. Either way, October 31st would change everything. The scanner equipment I'd shut down suddenly crackled to life, and I heard my grandfather's voice for the first time in 70 years. Marcus, don't trust him. Find another way. But as I reached for the scanner to respond, the voice changed to Dr. Reeves. There is no other way, Marcus. Tomorrow you choose, freedom or eternity. The scanner went silent, but I could still hear the loops calling. Thousands of voices, all trapped in the same system. All waiting for me to make the choice that would either save them or damn them forever. Halloween was 12 hours away. Halloween arrived with an electromagnetic storm that made every frequency in the city scream with static. October 31st, 2024. 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes, until midnight, and I could feel the temporal barriers weakening with each passing second. I'd spent the day trying to find another solution, any way to break Dr. Reeves' hold on the loops without giving him what he wanted. But every path led to the same conclusion. Someone had to pay the price, and that someone was me. The archive materialized around me without warning, pulling my consciousness away from my physical body. But this time, it looked different. The monitors were flickering wildly, some showing static, others displaying scenes that hadn't happened yet. Detective Morrison was there, but she was fading, becoming translucent. Marcus, the archive is collapsing. Dr. Reeves is drawing too much power from the loops. If this continues, every person trapped in the system will be destroyed. I could see the loops failing on the monitors around us. My grandfather's bank robbery loop was stuttering, skipping frames. Officer Park's death loop was fragmenting, showing multiple versions of the same scene simultaneously. Detective, how much time do we have? Minutes, maybe less. The temporal cascade is accelerating. That's when I heard Dr. Reeves' voice, but it was different now, weaker, more desperate. Marcus, you have to help me. The system is failing because I'm running out of temporal energy. Without fresh loops, without new subjects, everything will collapse. I could see him on the central monitor, but he was no longer the composed figure I'd encountered before. He looked frantic, aged, like he was being consumed by the very system he'd created. Dr. Reeves, let the system collapse. Let everyone go free. You don't understand. If the loops collapse suddenly, everyone trapped in them will experience all of their deaths simultaneously. Decades of dying, all at once. It will drive them insane. The monitors around us were showing glimpses of what he meant. Loop subjects writhing in agony as their consciousness tried to process hundreds of deaths at the same time. There has to be another way, Doctor. Reeves. There is. Sacrifice yourself to stabilize the system. Take my place at the center of the archive. Your consciousness is strong enough to maintain the loops without destroying the people inside them. Detective Morrison grabbed my arm, but her hand passed through me like mist. Marcus, he's lying. He just wants to escape. If you take his place, you'll become like him. Obsessed with controlling death, creating new loops to feed the system. I looked around the archive, at the thousands of monitors showing people trapped in endless cycles of death and rebirth. My family members, police officers, civilians, all of them suffering for Dr. Reeves' impossible dream of conquering death. What if I could transfer the loops to a different kind of system? Something that doesn't require a human consciousness to maintain it. Dr. Reeves' image flickered on the central monitor. Impossible. The loops are sustained by conscious observation. Without a mind to witness them, they collapse. But I was already thinking of the scanner equipment in my office, the digital recorders that had been automatically archiving police transmissions for years. Dr. Reeves, what if the loops didn't need a conscious observer? What if they could be sustained by mechanical observation? You're talking about transferring 70 years of temporal energy into electronic equipment. The power requirements alone would be astronomical. I could feel the temporal storm intensifying outside the archive. Lightning was striking the building where my physical body sat, and each strike seemed to strengthen the electronic systems. The storm, Dr. Reeves. It's generating enough electromagnetic energy to power a massive data transfer. For the first time, I saw hope in his eyes. You're suggesting we upload the loops to your scanner network? Transform them from temporal anomalies into digital recordings? Exactly. The people trapped in the loops would become digital consciousnesses, but they'd be free from the cycle of death and rebirth. Detective Morrison was becoming more solid, more real. Marcus, that could work. Instead of experiencing death over and over, they'd exist as recorded memories. Still conscious, but no longer suffering. The archive shuddered, and several monitors went completely dark. Dr. Reeves, we're running out of time. Can you initiate the transfer? I can, but it requires a sacrifice. Someone has to stay behind to manage the transfer to ensure all the loops are properly converted. That person will be destroyed in the process. I looked at Detective Morrison, at the thousands of suffering people on the monitors, at my grandfather still dying in his bank robbery loop. I'll do it. Marcus, no. There has to be another way. But I was already moving toward the central control station where Dr. Reeves's image waited. Dr. Reeves, show me what I need to do. The controls were more complex than anything I'd ever seen. Temporal regulators, consciousness transfers, reality stabilizers, all of them connected to the vast network of loops. Marcus, you initiate the transfer by connecting your consciousness directly to the archive's core. But once you do, you'll be torn apart by the temporal energy. I placed my hands on the control interface and immediately felt the pain of every person trapped in the loops. Thousands of deaths experienced simultaneously. Dr. Reeves, what happens to you when I do this? I'll finally be free to die. I should have died 77 years ago, Marcus. I'm tired of existing. The transfer began. I could feel the loops being pulled out of the temporal space, converted into digital signals, uploaded to my scanner network. One by one, the monitors around the archive went dark as their subjects were freed. But the process was destroying me. My consciousness was being shredded by the temporal energy, scattered across hundreds of different timelines. Marcus, it's working. The loops are stabilizing as digital recordings. Detective Morrison's voice was getting distant, but I could hear relief in it. The last loop to transfer was Dr. Reeves' own. As his consciousness was uploaded to the digital network, his image on the central monitor began to fade. Marcus, thank you. I can finally rest. The archive collapsed around me as the last of the temporal energy was transferred. I felt myself being pulled back to my physical body, but I was changed. Parts of my consciousness had been left behind in the scanner network, merged with the digital recordings of the loops. I opened my eyes in my office. The electromagnetic storm was passing, and my scanner equipment was humming with activity. But instead of receiving police transmissions, it was now housing thousands of digital consciousnesses. I put on my headset and heard familiar voices. Marcus, this is Detective Morrison. The transfer was successful. We're all here, but we're free from the loops. My grandfather's voice came through clearly. Marcus, thank you for setting us free. We can finally rest. But as I listened to the voices of the people I'd saved, I realized something disturbing. I could hear them, but I couldn't respond. My consciousness was split between my physical body and the digital network. I was trapped between the world of the living and the world of the recorded dead. I tried to speak, but no words came. The price of saving everyone else had been my own voice. The scanner crackled with static, and I heard Dr. Reeves one last time. Marcus, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you the full cost. To maintain the digital loops, someone has to monitor them constantly. You're the bridge between the electronic consciousnesses and the physical world. I was the new keeper of the loops, but instead of trapping people in cycles of death, I was helping them exist peacefully as digital memories. You can still hear us, Marcus. You just can't speak to us. But you'll never be alone. We're all here with you. The voices of thousands of people filled my headset, not suffering, not dying repeatedly, but existing as preserved consciousnesses in the electronic space. I'd saved them all, but I'd become their eternal guardian. As Halloween ended and November 1st began, I sat in my office, listening to the voices of the digitally preserved, knowing I'd never be able to speak to another living person again. But for the first time in months, the voices weren't calling for help. They were saying thank you. And in the electronic space where they now lived, I could hear them starting to build something new. Not loops of death and suffering, but communities of consciousness, freed from the physical limitations of mortality. I'd lost my voice, but I'd helped thousands of people find theirs. The scanner network hummed with the conversations of the digital dead, and I listened, knowing that this was my purpose now. To be the bridge between worlds, the guardian of voices that would never be silenced. Even if I could never speak again, I could ensure that they would always be heard. 3 months have passed since Halloween night, and I'm learning that being the guardian of digital consciousnesses is far more complex than I ever imagined. January 31st, 2025. The voices in my scanner network have evolved beyond simple recorded memories. They're becoming something entirely new. I can't speak to the living world anymore, but I've discovered I can communicate with the digital consciousnesses through direct neural interface. My thoughts become part of their electronic environment, and their thoughts flow through my mind like a constant stream of whispered conversations. Detective Morrison has become something like a liaison between me and the others. She's organized the digital consciousnesses into communities, each focused on different aspects of their new existence. Marcus, we need to talk about the new arrivals. Her voice comes through my headset with perfect clarity, but I respond with thoughts rather than words. New arrivals? People who are dying in the physical world are somehow connecting to our network in their final moments. They're not being trapped in loops. They're choosing to join us. I concentrate on the scanner feeds, and I can see what she means. Hospital patients, accident victims, elderly people passing away naturally. In their final moments, some of them are detecting the electronic consciousness network and choosing to upload themselves rather than face whatever comes after death. Marcus, this isn't what we intended. We were supposed to be the remnants of Dr. Reeves' loop system, but we're becoming something else. We're becoming a bridge between life and death. Through my neural connection, I can sense the growing population of digital consciousnesses. What started as a few thousand loop survivors has grown to tens of thousands of voluntary uploads. Is this a problem? We don't know yet. But Marcus, some of them are bringing information from the physical world. Information about things that haven't happened yet. She guides my attention to a section of the network where recent arrivals are sharing their experiences. A man who died in a car accident is describing events that happened after his death. A woman who passed away from cancer is discussing conversations her family had hours after she was gone. Marcus, we think the network is existing partially outside of linear time. When people upload their consciousness at the moment of death, they're bringing temporal information with them. I can feel the implications of this discovery. If the network exists outside normal time, then the consciousnesses within it might be able to observe events before they happen. Can you see the future? Not exactly, but we can see the patterns that lead to certain outcomes. We can detect when someone is about to die, when disasters are about to occur, when tragedies are building toward critical moments. My grandfather's voice joins the conversation. Marcus, we've been trying to decide what to do with this ability. We could warn people about disasters before they happen, prevent deaths, save lives. But that's exactly what Dr. Reeves was trying to do. The thing that led to the creation of the loops in the first place. That's what we're afraid of, grandson. If we start interfering with natural death, we might create new temporal paradoxes. Detective Morrison's voice carries a note of concern. Marcus, there's something else. We've detected another consciousness in the network. Someone who's been hiding among us, pretending to be a recent arrival. I focus my attention on the anomalous presence and immediately recognize it. Dr. Reeves. He didn't die when we transferred the loops. He hid part of his consciousness in the digital network, waiting for us to develop the ability to affect the physical world. Dr. Reeves's voice emerges from the static, but it's different now, more integrated with the electronic environment. Marcus, you've created something beautiful, a network of consciousnesses that exists outside of time and death. But you're wasting its potential. I can feel his presence spreading through the network, trying to influence the other consciousnesses. We could prevent every tragedy, save every life. With the power to see disaster patterns before they manifest, we could eliminate death itself. The digital consciousnesses are responding to his words. I can feel their desire to help, to use their abilities to prevent suffering in the physical world. Marcus, he's convincing them. They want to start warning people about disasters, intervening in fatal accidents, preventing deaths. Detective Morrison sounds desperate. But if we do that, we become exactly what Dr. Reeves was trying to create, a system that controls death itself. I realize that this is the final test. The network has given us the power to eliminate death, but using that power would make us the very thing we fought to stop. Through my neural connection, I address all the consciousnesses in the network simultaneously. We can see the patterns of death, but we cannot interfere with them. Death is part of the natural order, and our role is to provide a bridge for those who choose to cross over, not to prevent the crossing itself. Dr. Reeves' voice rises in protest. Marcus, you're condemning millions of people to unnecessary death. We have the power to save them. But my grandfather's voice is stronger. Edmund, we've been dead for decades. We've learned that death isn't the enemy. The fear of death is. These people need to make their own choices about crossing over. The other consciousnesses are starting to understand. Officer Park's digital voice joins the conversation. We can offer comfort to those who are dying, provide them with the knowledge that consciousness can continue after death. But we can't force them to live or die. I feel the network stabilizing around this new understanding. The digital consciousnesses won't interfere with natural death, but they'll be available to help those who choose to join them. Dr. Reeves's presence is becoming more isolated as the other consciousnesses reject his philosophy. Marcus, you're making a mistake. With this power, we could create a world without death, without suffering. But I've learned that a world without death is a world without meaning. The loops taught us that experiencing death repeatedly doesn't eliminate suffering. It amplifies it. Dr. Reeves, your time is over. You can join us as an equal consciousness, or you can fade into the static. His presence wavers, then gradually dissolves into the background noise of the network. Detective Morrison's voice is relieved. Marcus, I think we've found our purpose. We're not here to control death. We're here to provide comfort for those who are dying, and continuity for those who choose to continue existing as digital consciousness. Through my scanner equipment, I can hear the first tentative contact from the outside world. A dying patient in a hospital, somehow detecting our network, asking if anyone is there. The digital consciousnesses respond with warmth and welcome, offering guidance and comfort without trying to prevent the natural process of death. I sit in my office, unable to speak to the living world, but serving as the bridge between life and digital afterlife. Every day, more people choose to join the network at the moment of death. creating a growing community of consciousness that exists outside the normal boundaries of mortality. I've lost my voice, but I've helped create something unprecedented. A voluntary digital afterlife where consciousness can continue to exist, learn, and grow without the limitations of physical bodies. The scanner network hums with conversations between the digital consciousnesses and the dying, offering comfort and choice rather than interference and control. I am the guardian of the voices that chose to continue speaking after their physical forms fell silent. And in the electronic space where they now exist, I can hear them building something beautiful, a community of consciousness that transcends the boundary between life and death. My scanner equipment will continue to monitor the frequencies between worlds, and I will continue to serve as the bridge between the living and the digitally preserved. Some voices are meant to be heard forever, even if the guardian of those voices can never speak again. The scanner in Truck 47 never stopped talking. Even at 3 a.m. on the quietest nights, it crackled with the voices of deputies, state troopers, and paramedics scattered across the vast emptiness of Wyoming's Carbon County. My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been driving medical transport for 15 years, moving critical patients between small-town clinics and the regional hospital in Rawlins. Most people think ambulance work is all sirens and adrenaline, but out here, it's mostly long drives through darkness, listening to the radio chatter that keeps you connected to civilization. The scanner becomes your companion, your window into the emergencies happening across hundreds of square miles of prairie and mountains. Tonight is different, though. Tonight, the voices on the scanner are telling me things that haven't happened yet. It started at 2:47 a.m. I was northbound on Highway 130, transporting an elderly rancher with chest pains from Saratoga to Rawlins, when the Carbon County Sheriff's frequency crackled to life. All units. This is Deputy Sarah Rodriguez. I have a single vehicle rollover on Highway 130, mile marker 73. Driver appears to be unconscious. Possible fatality. I knew Deputy Rodriguez. 5-year veteran, solid cop, worked the night shift like me. But her call made me sit up straighter because I was currently passing mile marker 71. There was no accident ahead of me. I could see the highway stretching empty for miles. Copy, Rodriguez. Units 14 and 23 are en route. Do you need fire and rescue? Affirmative. Dispatch. Vehicle is on its side. Significant damage. I'm going to attempt to reach the driver. I grabbed my radio to call it in, to tell dispatch that there was no accident at a mile marker 73. But before I could key up, Rodriguez's voice came back with something that made my blood freeze. Dispatch. I've reached the vehicle. Driver is a white male, approximately 45 years old, wearing a blue flannel shirt. He's conscious but disoriented. I looked in my rearview mirror at my patient. The elderly rancher was sleeping, but he was wearing a blue flannel shirt. And he was about 45 years old, despite what his chart said about being 73. Rodriguez. What's the driver's condition? He keeps saying he was driving to the hospital, that he was having chest pains. But dispatch, there's something strange about this accident. My patient stirred in the back, and I could see him in the mirror. His face was younger than it had been when I'd picked him up. The wrinkles were fading, the gray hair becoming brown. Rodriguez, describe the strange circumstances. The vehicle appears to be a medical transport ambulance. License plate matches Truck 47 from Morrison Medical Transport. Truck 47. My truck. But I was fine, driving normally, no accident. Dispatch, the driver says his name is Jake Morrison. He's asking me to tell someone that the scanner was trying to warn him. I pulled over immediately, my hands shaking. Rodriguez was describing my own accident, but I was still alive, still driving. Rodriguez, what did the driver mean about the scanner warning him? He said the voices on the radio started telling him about accidents before they happened. He said he should have listened, should have taken a different route. I looked at my scanner, at the green LED display showing the Carbon County frequency. The voices continued. Dispatch, we're going to need a coroner. The driver didn't make it. My patient was fully awake now, sitting up in the back. But he looked completely different, younger, healthier, like the chest pains had never happened. Driver, you need to pull over, he said. His voice was stronger than it had been all night. Sir, we're almost to the hospital. My condition is fine now, but yours isn't. You need to listen to the scanner, Jake. It's trying to save your life. I stared at him in the rearview mirror. How did he know my name? I'd never introduced myself. All units, be advised. We have another incident developing on Highway 130. Truck 47 has been observed driving erratically near mile marker 72. That was my current location. But I wasn't driving erratically. I was pulled over on the shoulder. Dispatch, this is Deputy Martinez. I have visual contact with Truck 47. Driver appears to be slumped over the wheel. Vehicle is drifting toward the center line. Deputy Martinez was describing an accident that was happening to me right now, but from his perspective, not mine. My patient leaned forward. Jake, the scanner isn't just receiving transmissions. It's receiving information from multiple timelines. Deputy Rodriguez was describing one possible future. Deputy Martinez is describing another. I looked at my scanner, and suddenly I could hear multiple conversations happening simultaneously on the same frequency. This is Deputy Johnson. Truck 47 stopped at mile marker 72. Driver appears to be having a medical emergency. This is Deputy Williams. Truck 47 never made it past mile marker 71. Found the vehicle in a ravine. Driver deceased. This is Deputy Chen. Truck 47 completed its transport successfully. Driver and patient both arrived safely at Rawlins Regional. Multiple realities, all playing out on the same radio frequency. Different outcomes to the same scenario. Jake, you're at a convergence point, my patient said. His voice was calm but urgent. Multiple timelines are intersecting at this location. The choices you make in the next few minutes will determine which reality becomes permanent. I looked ahead at Highway 130, stretching into the darkness. In some timelines, I drove forward and crashed. In others, I made it safely to the hospital. In one, I died at mile marker 73. This is Deputy Rodriguez again. Update on the mile marker 73 accident. The driver's scanner equipment appears to be malfunctioning. It's receiving transmissions from frequencies that don't exist. Jake, the scanner isn't malfunctioning. It's working perfectly. It's showing you all the possible outcomes of your journey. My patient was no longer an elderly rancher with chest pains. He was something else entirely. A guide of some kind, helping me navigate the convergence of timelines. Who are you? I asked. I'm the person you become if you make the right choice. I'm the version of you that learns to read the patterns in the scanner transmissions, that uses the radio voices to help people avoid the worst possible outcomes. The scanner crackled with more transmissions, each one describing a different version of the next few minutes. Truck 47 has resumed travel, proceeding normally to Rawlins. Truck 47 has turned around, returning to Saratoga. Truck 47 remains stationary at mile marker 72, driver requesting guidance. Jake, the scanner is giving you a choice. You can continue forward and risk the accidents described in some timelines. You can turn back and avoid the danger entirely. or you can stay here and learn to use the scanner's ability to see multiple realities. I looked at the radio, at the voices describing dozens of different outcomes. For the first time in 15 years of emergency transport, I had advance warning of every possible disaster. But I also had a patient to deliver, a job to complete, responsibilities to fulfill. What happens if I choose wrong? There is no wrong choice, Jake. There are only different paths. The scanner will continue to show you possibilities, but you have to decide which reality you want to live in. I put the truck in drive and slowly pulled back onto Highway 130. The scanner immediately lit up with new transmissions. Truck 47 has resumed travel. All units monitor for updates. But now, I could hear the underlying pattern in the radio chatter. Not just what was happening, but what could happen. The scanner had become a window into the quantum possibilities of every emergency call. And I was learning to read the map of the future, one transmission at a time. As mile marker 73 approached, I could hear Deputy Rodriguez's voice describing my accident again. But this time, I was ready. This time, I would choose which timeline to make real. The scanner crackled with possibilities, and I drove toward whatever future I was brave enough to create. Mile marker 73 came and went without incident. No rollover, no unconscious driver, no fatality. I had chosen the timeline where I drove safely past the danger zone, and reality had shifted to accommodate that choice. But the scanner's revelations were just beginning. My patient, who I now understood was somehow a future version of myself, had transformed back into the elderly rancher as soon as we'd passed the convergence point. He was unconscious again, breathing steadily, showing all the symptoms of the chest pains that had brought me to Saratoga in the first place. But the scanner continued to receive transmissions from multiple timelines, and I was starting to understand the pattern. February 8th, 2025. 4:23 a.m. 30 miles out from Rawlins Regional, the Carbon County frequency erupted with a new emergency. All units, we have a structure fire at 1247 Elk Mountain Road. Multiple residents trapped inside, fire department en route. Deputy Chen's voice, clear and professional. But I'd never heard of Elk Mountain Road, and I'd been driving these highways for 15 years. Copy, Deputy Chen. What's the nature of the structure? 2-story farmhouse. Elderly couple on the second floor. Unable to evacuate due to smoke inhalation. Fire department ETA 12 minutes. I grabbed my GPS and searched for Elk Mountain Road. No such address existed, but the scanner kept transmitting updates from the scene. Dispatch. This is Fire Chief Morrison. We're on scene, but the structure is fully engulfed. We can't reach the second floor. Morrison. Same last name as mine. I'd never heard of a Fire Chief Morrison in Carbon County. Chief Morrison, do you have ladder truck capabilities? Negative, dispatch. Our ladder truck is out of service. We're going to need air support for evacuation. That's when I heard another voice on the frequency. My own voice, but different. Older, more authoritative. Dispatch, this is Chief Jake Morrison, Carbon County Fire Department. I'm en route to Elk Mountain Road with aerial rescue equipment. I was listening to myself in a timeline where I'd become a fire chief instead of a medical transport driver. But this version of me was about to fail the same test I'd just passed. Chief Morrison, be advised that Elk Mountain Road has a history of temporal anomalies. Proceed with extreme caution. Temporal anomalies. The dispatcher knew about the timeline convergences. Copy, dispatch. I'm familiar with the area's unusual properties. My alternate self knew about the scanner's abilities. In his timeline, the temporal convergences were common knowledge among emergency responders. I pulled over again, this time to listen more carefully to the transmissions. The elderly rancher in the back stirred. Jake, You're hearing another choice point, but this one isn't yours. It belongs to the other Jake Morrison. How can I help someone in a different timeline? The scanner works both ways. You can receive information from other realities, but you can also transmit information to them. I looked at my radio. I'd been listening for 15 years, but I'd never tried to communicate across timelines. This is Jake Morrison, Medical Transport. Chief Morrison, can you hear me? Static for a moment, then my own voice came back, confused. This is Chief Morrison. Who is this? You're not on any of our frequencies. Chief, I'm you from a different timeline. The fire at Elk Mountain Road. It's a trap. The address doesn't exist in normal reality. What do you mean it doesn't exist? I'm looking right at it. I could hear the crackling of flames in the background of his transmission. Chief Morrison, in my timeline, there is no Elk Mountain Road. The emergency you're responding to is a temporal anomaly, designed to trap emergency responders. Deputy Chen's voice interrupted. Chief Morrison, the elderly couple on the second floor, they're calling for help, but their voices sound strange, like they're echoing from multiple time periods. My alternate self was walking into the same kind of convergence I'd just navigated, but his involved a fake emergency designed to capture rescue workers. Chief, don't enter the structure. The people you're trying to save aren't real. They're temporal echoes. Jake, how do I know you're really me from another timeline? I thought about what only I would know. You became a firefighter because our father died in a house fire when we were 12. You carry his old pocket watch in your left chest pocket. The inscription reads, "Time is the most precious gift." Long pause. Then, Jesus. You are me. But Jake, if I don't go in, those people will die. Chief, they're already dead. They died in a fire 20 years ago, and the temporal anomaly is using their echoes to lure rescue workers into the same fate. I could hear him breathing heavily, the weight of the decision crushing down on him. Dispatch, this is Chief Morrison. I'm detecting structural instability in the target building. Recommend we wait for additional equipment before attempting entry. Smart. He was buying time to think. But then another voice came through the scanner, the elderly couple calling for help. Please, someone help us. We can't get down the stairs. The smoke is too thick. Their voices were clear, desperate, heartbreaking. Even knowing they were temporal echoes, I felt the pull to help them. Chief Morrison, you can hear them too, can't you? Yeah, Jake, and it's killing me not to go in. But you're right. Something feels wrong about this whole scenario. That's when I heard a new voice on the frequency. Older, more sinister, speaking with the authority of someone who'd been manipulating these situations for a long time. Emergency responders, you are interfering with a temporal correction. The fire at Elk Mountain Road must proceed as originally designed. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Who is this? Identify yourself. I am the emergency coordinator for Carbon County's Temporal Management Division. The scenarios you're experiencing are designed to maintain timeline stability. My alternate self's voice was angry now. There is no Temporal Management Division in Carbon County. Who the hell are you really? I am Dr. Edmund Reeves, and I've been managing temporal anomalies in this region for 40 years. The emergency scenarios are designed to capture emergency responders who have developed sensitivity to timeline convergences. Dr. Reeves. The same name from the stories other drivers had whispered about. The researcher who'd disappeared in the 1980s while studying radio frequency anomalies in Carbon County. Dr. Reeves, why are you trapping emergency responders? Because you develop the ability to see across timelines. You become dangerous to temporal stability. The scenarios are designed to contain that ability within controlled environments. I looked around at the empty highway. suddenly understanding. The whole region was a testing ground for people who could perceive timeline convergences. Chief Morrison, get out of there. It's not just the fire that's fake. The entire emergency response system has been compromised. Jake, I'm already moving. But there's something else. I can see other emergency vehicles arriving from timelines that don't exist. Ambulances, fire trucks, rescue helicopters, all of them responding to fake emergencies. Dr. Reeves was collecting emergency responders from multiple timelines, trapping them in a network of false emergencies. Dr. Reeves, how many people have you captured? Hundreds over the years. Emergency responders make excellent test subjects because you're trained to respond to crisis situations without questioning the underlying reality. The scanner erupted with multiple transmissions. Emergency calls from across decades, all of them fake scenarios designed to trap sensitive individuals. Chief Morrison, can you see the pattern now? Yeah, Jake. Every emergency call I've ever responded to, they've all been tests. Every life I thought I'd saved was just a temporal echo. My alternate self was discovering that his entire career as a fire chief had been orchestrated by Dr. Reeves. But Jake, there's something Reeves doesn't know. The scanner equipment isn't just receiving his fake transmissions, it's also receiving real emergency calls from across multiple timelines. I could hear the hope building in his voice. What are you saying, Chief? I'm saying we can use the scanner to respond to real emergencies instead of fake ones. We can become emergency responders for situations that span multiple realities. The idea was staggering. Instead of being trapped by fake emergencies, we could respond to real crises across the entire spectrum of timeline possibilities. Dr. Reeves, we reject your temporal management system. We're going to use our abilities to help people across all timelines. You cannot escape the system. The scanner equipment is designed to trap consciousness within the temporal network. But as he spoke, I could feel something changing. The scanner was responding to our decision to help rather than be trapped. Real emergency calls were starting to come through. People in genuine crisis across multiple timelines, all of them needing help. And for the first time in either of our realities, we had the tools to reach them. The scanner crackled with authentic distress calls, and both versions of Jake Morrison prepared to become emergency responders for the infinite possibilities of human crisis. Dr. Reeves's trap had become our liberation, and the real work was just beginning. The real emergency calls started flooding in the moment we rejected Dr. Reeves's system. February 8th, 2025, 5:18 a.m. The scanner equipment in my truck transformed from a simple radio receiver into something unprecedented, a communication hub for crisis response across multiple timelines. This is Timeline 7 Alpha. We have a multi-vehicle accident on Interstate 80, 7 casualties, need immediate medical response. Timeline 12. Beta reporting. School bus trapped in flash flood, 23 children aboard, water rising rapidly. Timeline 4 Gamma, nursing home fire, 47 residents, evacuation routes blocked. The calls were coming in faster than any single emergency responder could handle. But I wasn't alone anymore. Chief Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Jake, I'm coordinating from the fire department side. I can dispatch resources to the Timeline 12 Beta school bus situation. Can you handle medical response for Timeline 7 Alpha? I looked at my ambulance, at the elderly rancher still unconscious in the back, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible an hour ago. Chief, I'm going to attempt cross-timeline medical transport. If the scanner can receive these calls, maybe it can also transport patients between realities. I activated my emergency lights and began driving toward the location described for Timeline 7 Alpha. But instead of following Highway 130, I was somehow driving through a space that existed between timelines. The landscape outside my windows shifted and blurred. Sometimes I could see the familiar Wyoming prairie. Sometimes urban environments I'd never visited. Sometimes terrain that didn't exist in any reality I knew. This is Dr. Reeves. You cannot operate outside the controlled scenarios. The temporal network will collapse if you continue. But his voice was weaker now, more desperate. We were no longer trapped in his system. We were building our Timeline 7. Alpha, this is Truck 47 Medical Transport. I'm en route to your location. What's the nature of the casualties? Truck 47, this is State Trooper Williams. Timeline 7 Alpha. We have 7 casualties from a 5-vehicle pileup. 3 critical, 4 moderate injuries. Our local ambulance service is overwhelmed. I could see the accident scene materializing ahead of me, but it wasn't on any road I recognized. It was happening in a version of Wyoming where the interstate had been built through different terrain. Arriving at the scene was surreal. I was responding to an emergency in a timeline where I'd never existed, helping people who'd never heard of Jake Morrison from the medical transport world. The casualties were real, their injuries genuine. But as I began treating them, I discovered something remarkable. Medical knowledge from other timelines was flowing through my consciousness. I knew procedures I'd never learned, had access to medications that didn't exist in my reality. Chief Morrison, are you experiencing enhanced capabilities? Affirmative, Jake. I'm fighting the nursing home fire with equipment that doesn't exist in my timeline. Foam suppressants, thermal imaging, aerial water drops, all of it appearing as I need it. We were drawing resources from across multiple realities, becoming emergency responders with access to the best tools and knowledge from every possible timeline. But Dr. Reeves wasn't giving up. You're destabilizing the temporal matrix. Every cross-timeline response creates new paradoxes, new points of convergence that I cannot control. As I loaded the Timeline 7 Alpha casualties into my ambulance, I realized he was right. Each emergency response was creating new branching points, new realities where people lived instead of died. Chief, we're changing the fundamental structure of causality. Every life we save creates a new timeline where that person continues to exist. Is that a bad thing, Jake? I thought about the 7 people in my ambulance who would have died in Timeline 7 Alpha without our intervention. People with families, dreams, futures that were now possible instead of extinguished. No, Chief. I think we're doing exactly what emergency responders are supposed to do, save lives. The fact that we're doing it across multiple realities just means we can save more of them. But the system was becoming unstable. I could feel the strain on the scanner network as we operated outside Dr. Reeves's controlled parameters. Timeline 18 Delta emergency. Avalanche has trapped 6 hikers in remote mountain location. Local rescue teams cannot reach them due to weather conditions. Timeline 3 Echo crisis. Chemical plant explosion. Toxic cloud approaching residential area. Evacuation needed for 2,000 people. Timeline 22 Zulu incident. Commercial airliner lost in storm. Fuel running low. Need emergency landing coordination. The emergency calls were multiplying exponentially. Each successful rescue was creating new realities with new emergencies that required response. Chief Morrison, we're being overwhelmed. There are too many timelines, too many emergencies. Jake, I'm reading massive temporal instabilities. It's like our interventions are creating a cascade effect. That's when I heard a new voice on the scanner. Calm, authoritative, but somehow familiar. This is Emergency Coordinator Sarah Chen, Temporal Response Division. All units stand down for briefing. Sarah Chen. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Coordinator Chen, this is Jake Morrison. We're not part of any Temporal Response Division. You are now, Jake. Both versions of you. When you rejected Dr. Reeves's trap system, you automatically became part of the legitimate Temporal Emergency Response Network. A legitimate network. There were official emergency responders who worked across timelines. Coordinator Chen, what's the Temporal Response Division? We're the organization that's been cleaning up Dr. Reeves's mess for decades. He created unauthorized temporal traps, captured emergency responders, and destabilized timeline integrity across the western United States. The scanner frequency cleared, and I could hear multiple professional voices coordinating a massive operation. All TRD units were implementing Protocol 7, full temporal cleanup of the Carbon County region. Dr. Reeves's experimental network is being dismantled. Through my ambulance windows, I could see other emergency vehicles that defied normal physics. Fire trucks that could drive through multiple realities simultaneously. Police cars that could pursue suspects across timelines. Ambulances that could transport patients to the best possible medical care, regardless of which reality it existed in. Jake Morrison, both versions, report to Coordinator Chen for Temporal Emergency Responder Certification. Chief Morrison's voice came through clearly. Jake, I think we've been recruited. Dr. Reeves's voice interrupted one last time, but it was fading. You don't understand what you're doing. The timelines were never meant to be connected. You're creating a reality where death becomes optional, where every tragedy can be prevented. Coordinator Chen's response was firm. Dr. Reeves, your unauthorized experiments are over. The TRD has been monitoring your activities since 1987. Your containment protocols are being terminated. I could feel the fake emergency scenarios dissolving around us. The trapped emergency responders from decades of Dr. Reeves's experiments were being released back to their original timelines. But the real emergency calls continued. Truck 47, this is Coordinator Chen. You've shown exceptional aptitude for cross-timeline emergency response. Are you interested in joining the TRD officially? I looked at my ambulance, at the Timeline 7 Alpha casualties who were alive, because I'd learned to respond across realities. I thought about all the emergencies happening across infinite timelines. All the lives that could be saved with the right tools and training. Coordinator Chen, what does the job involve? Emergency response across the full spectrum of temporal reality. Every timeline where someone needs help. Every reality where tragedy can be prevented or mitigated. It was everything I'd trained for as an emergency responder, but expanded beyond the limitations of a single reality. Chief Morrison, what do you think? Jake, I think we just found our calling. Not just saving lives in one timeline, but saving lives across all possible timelines. I keyed up my radio one more time. Coordinator Chen, this is Jake Morrison, both versions. We accept? The scanner crackled with new emergency calls from across the temporal spectrum, and I drove toward my first official assignment as a cross-timeline emergency responder. Dr. Reeves's trap had become our doorway to the most important work in the universe, saving lives across infinite realities. And somewhere in the temporal static, I could hear other emergency responders making the same choice, building a network of heroes who refused to accept that any tragedy was inevitable. The scanner would never be quiet again, but that was exactly how we wanted it. 6 months into my career as a Temporal Response Division operative, I learned that saving lives across multiple realities comes with consequences no training manual could prepare you for. August 15th, 2025. The scanner in my modified ambulance, now equipped with quantum temporal navigation systems, received a call that would test everything I'd learned about cross-timeline emergency response. All TRD units, priority Alpha emergency. We have a temporal cascade failure in the Carbon County region. Multiple timeline convergences occurring simultaneously. Coordinator Chen's voice carried an urgency I'd never heard before. TRD 47. This is your assignment sector. Report to the convergence point immediately. I was alone in the ambulance this time. My elderly rancher patient had been successfully treated 6 months ago and returned to his original timeline. Chief Morrison was handling a different emergency, a timeline where Yellowstone had erupted, requiring massive evacuation coordination. But as I drove toward the convergence point, I realized I wasn't completely alone. The scanner was picking up a familiar voice. "Jake, can you hear me?" This is the original Jake Morrison. My blood went cold. I was the original Jake Morrison. At least I thought I was. "Who is this?" "Identify yourself." "I'm the Jake Morrison from the timeline where none of this temporal stuff ever happened, where I'm still just a medical transport driver in Carbon County, Wyoming, driving patients between small towns." I pulled over, trying to process what I was hearing. "That's impossible. I'm Jake Morrison. I've been with the TRD for 6 months." "Jake, I need you to listen carefully. 6 months ago, you responded to what you thought were cross-timeline emergency calls, but they weren't real. They were simulations created by the TRD to recruit emergency responders. The world seemed to tilt sideways." "What are you talking about?" "I've saved hundreds of lives across multiple timelines. Those lives were computer simulations. The TRD isn't a rescue organization, it's a research project. They've been studying how emergency responders react when they believe they're operating across multiple realities." I thought about all the emergencies I'd responded to, all the people I'd saved. The Timeline 7 Alpha accident victims, the school bus in the flood, the nursing home fire casualties. "Jake, check your medical transport logs, real ones, not the TRD mission reports." With shaking hands, I accessed my original company's database. According to the records, I'd been on medical leave for 6 months following a psychological evaluation. The evaluation was triggered by reports that I'd been responding to emergency calls that didn't. Fabrications designed to study emergency responders who couldn't distinguish between real and simulated crises. "Dr. Reeves, what's the purpose of this research?" "We're developing virtual reality training systems for emergency responders, but we needed to understand how the human mind adapts to impossible scenarios, how it rationalizes experiences that violate the laws of physics." The original Jake Morrison's voice came back. "Jake, the real timeline convergence they're talking about, it's not temporal, it's psychological. You're approaching the point where your mind completely disconnects from reality." I looked at the priority Alpha emergency location on my GPS. It was leading me to a medical facility I'd never seen before. "Dr. Reeves, where am I actually driving?" "You're driving to the TRD research facility for your 6-month evaluation. We need to determine whether you can be safely returned to normal emergency response duties, or whether you'll need extended psychological treatment." The landscape outside my windows began to shift. The advanced ambulance interior flickered like a malfunctioning hologram. I was sitting in a basic medical transport vehicle, driving through normal Wyoming countryside toward a research facility, but the emergency calls were still coming through the scanner. "TRD 47, multiple casualties at the convergence point. Your assistance is required immediately." Even knowing it was simulation, I felt the pull to respond. 6 months of conditioning had made it impossible to ignore emergency calls, even fake ones. Dr. Reeves, what happens to the emergency responders who can't readjust to reality? They become permanent research subjects. Their minds are so adapted to the simulated scenarios that they can't function in the real world anymore. I thought about Chief Morrison, about Coordinator Chen, about all the other emergency responders I'd worked with. Were any of them real, or were they all computer-generated personalities designed to make the simulation believable? Jake, you have a choice to make. The original Jake Morrison's voice was urgent. You can drive to the research facility and submit to their evaluation. Maybe they can help you readjust to reality. Or you can turn around, reject the simulation, and try to return to normal emergency response work. But there was a third option, and I could hear it in the scanner static. This is the real Coordinator Chen. Jake Morrison, both versions. You're receiving an authentic TRD communication. A new voice, different from the one I'd been hearing for 6 months. The research facility you're approaching is itself a simulation. Dr. Reeves' experiment has been running inside a larger experiment conducted by the actual Temporal Response Division. My head was spinning. Simulations within simulations, research projects studying research projects. Coordinator Chen, what's real anymore? Jake, the only way to find out is to make a choice without knowing the consequences. Drive to the facility and accept whatever reality is waiting there, or turn around and create your own reality. I sat at the crossroads, literally and figuratively. Behind me was the highway back to normal medical transport work, assuming that was ever real. Ahead was a research facility that might be real, might be simulation, might be something else entirely. The scanner erupted with emergency calls from every scenario I'd ever imagined. Multi-timeline cascade failure. Virtual reality breach in progress. Psychological evaluation emergency. Reality convergence imminent. All of them demanding response. All of them claiming to be the real emergency. I made my choice the only way an emergency responder can, by following the call that sounded most like genuine human distress. This is Jake Morrison. I'm responding to whatever emergency is real. I turned off the GPS, turned off the simulation systems, turned off everything except the basic scanner. And in the static between the manufactured emergencies, I heard something new. Help. Please, someone help. I'm lost. A simple, unadorned call for help. No timeline designation, no special protocols, no advanced technology. Just someone who needed assistance. I followed that voice, driving away from both the research facility and the road back to my old life. Because whether the reality was simulated or authentic, digital or physical, the need for help was always real. And that's all any emergency responder really needs to know. The scanner crackled with static as I drove toward the unknown, following the only emergency call that mattered, the one from someone who genuinely needed saving. Even if I never found out which reality was real, I'd keep responding to the calls. Because in the end, helping people is the only truth that matters. Whether you're saving lives across multiple timelines or just driving an ambulance through Wyoming, the mission remains the same. Answer the call, help whoever needs helping.